Good morning, everyone. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Good morning.
Welcome to the March 17th, 2022, 9 a.m. Planning Board special meeting. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Seeing we have a quorum, so we can have an official meeting. I want to read a conflict of interest statement, which we really should have at the beginning of each of our meetings, and it's been added by staff to the agenda here. Does any member of the planning board have a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest with regard to any item on the agenda? And if so, please state so at this time. Richard?
No.
Ron?
Nope.
No.
No.
No for me as well. Now we have number 2 in the agenda, amendments and approval of the draft agenda. I would like to request that we reverse number 1 and number 2 under old business and have the Article 11 sign regulations go first with the UDO audit continuation to go second. The reason is I think we can get through the Article 11 fairly quickly because we've been massaging this for quite a while. And the UDO audit continuation, we've already previously voted to have a 2-hour maximum on the length of that meeting unless we have a unanimous vote to continue beyond then. So I would like to entertain a motion, or I'd like to make a motion to reverse 1 and 2 in our old business agenda for today.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, under old business, the Article 11 sign regulations amendment consideration. I'd like to make a brief opening statement in that this is the 4th or 5th planning board meeting, 4th meeting that we've been working on these same revisions. And I'm grateful that Wes is here for the second part of our meeting today because there's a couple questions that I think he can answer that can really button this up. So thank you, Wes, for being here. Well, we all seem to agree on the planning board that UDO section 11.8 needs work, and that's what our UDO rewrite will address, and that's the second item on our agenda today and a continuing thing over the next several months. However, our immediate goal is to be responsive to the application, the applicant before us that was initiated by a developer regarding signs. We need to make recommendations to town council that represent the best overall interest of our citizens. We're dealing here for the public's edification. We're dealing here with 2 types of signs. One is a monument entrance sign at the entrance of a subdivision, and the other is within a subdivision, non-residential use within that residential zone, such as pools or restaurants or other amenities that would be inside of that subdivision, and signs related to them. The focus our focus has been on the overall sign size for each of these 2 uses, as well as the lettering footprint within that sign that would have lettering, numbers, logos that would really what the sign is all about. I believe it important that we don't want every subdivision of, let's say, 2 homes to have its own entrance sign and amenity sign. So I believe it's strongly that we need to have a size for that subdivision that would allow such signs. I'm not speaking for the entire planning board here or trying to, but Chad and I have discussed this face-to-face several times over the last couple of months, most recently last week. Chad and I have both agreed mutually, even though we're not 100% either one, it's a compromise, that entrance signs only should be for major subdivisions. And our definition within our UDO of a major subdivision is a subdivision of 6 homes or more. So if it's 1 to 5 homes, no entrance signs. for that no monument entrance signs. Chad and I have also generally agreed that the overall size for this entrance sign should be maxed out at 20 feet in length and 10 foot in height, with the lettering within the face area to be limited to 64 square feet. And really leaving it up to the developer to, within the overall sign limits that we're imposing, to have the lettering positioned as they feel best to reflect what they're trying to say. We've also agreed on the non-residential sign use of an overall length of 14 feet and a maximum height of 6 feet, which would be 84 square feet. And with the same face area of 64 square feet for the lettering face area. There are a couple of outside issues, which I'm glad Wes is here, as I said, to address. And Chad wanted to get Wes's input, or at least the legal interpretation, for the non-residential sign use as to whether we could limit it to major subdivisions of 6 units or more. And I believe strongly that we should do that. We should not allow smaller subdivisions to have non-residential use signs within their subdivision. I also believe that the illumination clause that staff has added within the text amendment we're reviewing today, that the illumination clause that deals with lighting for the non-residential signs, so it should also be applicable to the entrance sign as well. And basically that's because our present UDO section 11.6 really does need improvement. That's really all I have to say. I would like to hear Wes or Chad address the major subdivision for entrance signs.
I'll start. I think the biggest thing, and Jerry mentioned this at the last meeting, and Pete, I know you and I worked through this. I think this is going to be a point of conversation this morning, and that is going to be in section 11.8A, the proposed 14 feet in overall length going to 20 and 6 feet in height going to 10. I know Jerry was specifically stated in the last meeting that he felt comfortable leaving it at 14 and 6. However, we are now separating this on entrance signs and non-residential uses in the residential zoning district monument sign. So that would be my thing. I wanted to make sure that Jerry's input was heard here and concern, and bring that up amongst the board. And then the Wes, just asking him if you can limit the signs in a subdivision for non-residential use. So if you have a subdivision that has 5 lots or less, they have an amenity site, could you limit that non-residential use not to have a monument sign based on the size of the subdivision?
Yes, but we would just have to carefully figure out that language, because the way you have it in here, it's just any non-residential use, and it may also need to be a little bit better defined as to what exactly. I mean, mine and look, I haven't been here for the 5 meetings, so and I do not want to open a whole nother can of worms. My understanding, though, is that you all want to allow signage for certain amenities, correct? In a residentially zoned area.
Yes.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Amenities only.
Yes, like swimming pools, restaurants, tennis courts, things that are used typically by that subdivision for their use.
Okay.
And perhaps commercial entities that are embedded within the subdivision. So the example that we always bring up is the house restaurant within Sea Trails.
Yep.
The other issue that may be addressed in the language here is some major subdivisions in their entranceway have signage in the median strip that, for instance, there is a sign on the north entrance of Sea Trails that publicizes a restaurant that no longer exists.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're going to encourage commercial operators to work within a major subdivision, we need to potentially set aside the potential for them to create signage that is consistent with the look of at the entranceway. And this is something we've discussed, and I think is in addition to this
Yes,
application.
that would be an addition.
I'd submit that I'd like to try to keep the focus on the applicant's
Yep.
request for a
Okay.
non-residential sign as opposed to going out and
Yep.
finding the UDO rewrite is where we can address those.
Okay.
Yep.
We need to be responsive to the applicant and our citizens
Yes.
and what's been before us right now.
Point well taken.
Yes.
We'll also say, outside of the 14 to 20 and the 6 to 10, that this ordinance, along with sitting down with Pete for an hour and a half last Friday, and more conversation going into later that afternoon, this does address all the issues that we had from the applicant and the meeting on March the 3rd. Leaving that meeting and going into this one.
Okay.
And in fairness of transparency, Chad has some examples of signs that this specific applicant is wanting to use. And when you look at those signs, to me, they are desirable. And so that is why I was willing to go to the dimensions I went to,
For
20
this
foot,
applicant.
20 foot by 10 and 14 foot by 6, because I see what they want to supply. Now, we have an opportunity in the UDO rewrite to go back and massage this again, but we need to have something right now.
Is there a way to display those signs on any of the screens here?
I don't have that information.
It's backlit sign. It would look similar to a subdivision entrance sign, essentially, but it would just be for the amenity site.
Well, none of the subdivision signs are backlit. They're all front lit.
They're supposed to be front lit.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Supposed to
right
be
there,
no
we got-
interior lighting, no
Or-
internal lighting. It has to be exterior lighting.
Sorry, the illumination is silhouette lighting.
Yes.
It's the proper language.
And I would just like to see a reference to what is written in C2 for non-residential use. I would like to have C2 referenced in
Yep.
A as well,
Yep.
because our 11.6 that deals with illuminating signs
Mhm.
is weak.
Yep.
And right now, they could do quite a bit with a monument entrance sign
Sure.
that I think would not be in the spirit of what the planning board wants to see.
Okay.
Yeah, can I get a better definition of silhouette sign as opposed to front lit?
So, imagine that the lettering is
Raised off.
raised off, and then there's some lighting,
Lighting
actually
behind it.
behind
Creates
it.
a shadow.
It creates a
The,
shadow.
the lighting cannot be internal to the sign. It must
Yeah.
be out to the sign,
Yeah.
broadcasted onto
Yep.
the
Well,
sign.
it sounds like the silhouette sign, the lighting is coming from behind the sign.
That's
Wrong?
correct.
I'd like to go, Chad, just good point. And I'm starting with Jerry. Can we go through the board and have everybody have their comments about what the staff has recommended, in addition to maybe what I just read, and I can answer any questions if what I said wasn't clear. Jerry, your sizing.
Excuse me. The signs, I'm not a big fan of signs, and obviously it came out. How many units is Bill Clark going to build in that subdivision?
300 and something.
So here's my point: is after he's all totally built out, all of a sudden you're stuck with a huge sign.
Well, so is Sea Trail now.
Well, Sea Trail's been
It-
grandfathered in. So I guess my only point is here you got a sign now 10 feet in the air, and this wide after it's built out. So that's my only point. Is that sign noise?
Good point.
I refer to that as sign noise.
I'm sorry, I don't understand exactly what you're saying.
Once the project is built out completely,
Yes.
now you have a sign now with the entrance signs 10 feet tall. My point is, I like to minimize those signs. So after it's built out, was it a 2-year build out or less on those homes?
No, it'll be more. than
It'll
2
be
years.
5 or
It'll be
6.
5 to 10 years.
So when it's all totally built out, I would not like to see a big sign. Who is it for? People coming there? Who live there?
But isn't the top of the sign the 10 feet,
Yes.
not the bottom?
Right.
So therefore, I mean, I'm 5'7". That's not that much taller than me. I don't have an issue with that.
You asked me what my issue is.
Yeah.
Well, and
Once it's built out, you're going to have a sign 10 feet tall.
Sybil, your comments on, I guess, the topic as we look at it right now.
For now, I think this is fine. I have no issues with it. I think it's something we need to get done. And then if we still, everybody has issues, then we get to the UDO, we go at it.
Well said.
Yeah.
Ron, and we'll work our way through Richard.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. So, well, a couple of things, I guess. I think the addition of the major subdivision is good, fine. That at least gives us some delineation that it's not everybody. We can certainly work on what's major or not major at some point in the definition section, whether the 6 is the magic number or not. On the size thing, I agree with Chad, and I sort of agree with what Gerald just throwing back to the last meeting. We had that long discussion on the height, on the height being 6 feet. But in light of the fact that we also added the feet in overall height from the lowest adjacent grade, that makes that more stringent.
Yeah.
Okay. So in light of that, I'm quite open to expanding that. I'm more open now to expanding that over 6. I certainly could be had up to 10, but maybe some compromise at 8, because I discussed at the last meeting when I drove around town, a number of the signs, especially the medium ones, are on mounds. So trying to find, does that count as the height, the mound that it sits on, or not? So by eliminating the mound now, essentially, with that language, correct, the way I read it, when you say to the J, in other words, if there's a medium and a mound and a sign, that at this point, the 10-foot or 6-foot starts from the road to the top of
Yeah.
the sign.
That's the way I
So we've
understand
made that more strict by giving that language that I'm open to expanding the 6 to either 8 or 10. Okay.
Thank you.
So I think that's fine. And the overall width, I guess I'm fine with. And then certainly in the rewrite here that Chad's taken on, taking Sybil's suggestion of splitting those 2 sentences up, the 64 square feet period, and here's the size of the monument. The way unfortunately, maybe I was not right, but I think the way it was written before mixed those 2 up.
Right.
With the 64-foot comma, 14-foot comma, 6-foot. Was that describing I know in Chad's mind, he was clear that he was describing the monument with the feet and the signage with the area, but I think you could have read it the other way and said, that's just describing the graphic area. The monument can be any size. That was my objection that I maybe didn't communicate properly last time.
Oh, you did.
But the way Sybil suggested is put a period there and break those 2 sentences up. Was fine. So I guess in my mind, I'm good with this, other than some discussion on the height, certainly being no less than 6 and no more than 10, whichever number we agree on. And I agree the lighting could be, paragraph 2 could be moved to an A2 also. And I guess one other small consideration, are we all okay on the 14 by 6 on the secondary side? Or I could be having that a little bit smaller, 12 by 6, but I can leave it as it is too, I guess. I think we want the extra signs to be somewhat diminutive to the main signs. So I'm okay with the general.
They are smaller. They're 84 square feet versus 200 square feet. So there is a difference.
Well, it depends what we finalize them.
True.
Landscaping
True.
and fill.
Ron, were you finished?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I'm still struggling with the 10 feet because we're basically looking at ground floor to that, whatever you want to call that soffit. And the secondary concern is this community has a long tradition of approving a single applicant and then trying to go back and get the genie back in the bottle with the standard regulations. And one of the most consistent things that I heard during the campaign was, it's not fair that a certain developer gets to do something when rules prohibit everybody else from doing the same thing.
What height are you comfortable with?
Well, whatever height we define here ought to be the height that we define in the UDO.
What are you comfortable with?
10 feet to me, I mean, I surveyed the monument signs and around the entire community, and the majority of them. Okay. Right. The majority of the signs that I see might have an area where the sign ascends to 10 feet and then has an area to the left and right that is much lower. Sea trails like that.
What height are you comfortable with?
The height I'm comfortable with is probably somewhere between 6 and 10. I mean, that, and having not seen the example of the sign that they want to send us, my other concern is when somebody drives down 904, are they going to be greeted by, hey, you're just entering the sanctuary, as opposed to, no, you're entering the town of Sunset Beach? Because that sign is right on the entrance on 904, and I'm a little uncomfortable with creating a sign of such stature, and it's unfortunate that we can't get a view of it.
It's out in front of the Sunset Beach Welcome To sign. You're right.
Right.
Well, let me so we can kind of
Yeah.
see where we are.
Yeah.
I'm reading Sybil to say, as is, where is.
Mhm.
I'm reading Jerry to say that he's uncomfortable with a larger sign. But if we're going to allow signs, there needs to be a height restriction that you're comfortable with.
I'll go in between. I'll cut it
Okay.
8 feet.
Okay. Ron is 8 to 10 feet. He'd approve, and Richard is 8.
In the
6
spirit
to
of
10 feet
compromise,
that he
I'm
would
happy
approve.
to.
Are we talking about entrance signs or?
Yes, we're
Yes.
right down.
We're talking about entrance signs.
A 11.8A round.
Now,
Okay.
I'm going to pose a question to staff. If we agree, I'm comfortable with 10 feet, as I told Chad before. And I think the developer is going to put a sign up there that enhances the development from a selling and marketing standpoint. So I would hope that would still be the case 15 years from now when the place is all sold out. It would enhance the individuality of that subdivision, which I think they have the right to do. So I'm comfortable with 10 feet. I will back down to 8 feet because it seems like that would pass unanimously. But I need to turn to town staff and say, what does that do to conversations maybe you've had with the applicant so far on entrance signs?
The entrance sign was never the main focal point of this. It was the non-residential sign.
Well, we're going to move to the non-residential sign after
Right.
this.
So the entrance sign, up until our conversations in the past couple of meetings, that's really brought this to the forefront. I'm okay with the pleasure of the board of whatever the height and length wants to be. I think the 64 square feet is where we need to in sign face area needs to be kind of stay where it's at.
Nobody's objected to that.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah,
that
and I
the
think-
developer is going to build the lettering and logo within the overall sign
Yeah.
that best makes it look right. We're really, the hot button is the overall sign dimension.
Correct.
You're saying whatever the pleasure of the board is, we tell you what to do.
Sure.
So but that's not the answer I want. Is if we agreed on 8 feet, does that create consternation for items that you already have in motion?
No.
All right. Now, my second question is, are we comfortable with whatever we define to the applicant as the standard we're going to create in the UDO?
Well, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
That's what we're doing.
All right.
What about the non-residential use sign? Wes, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to, and obviously this needs to go to council, but if they're not asking for a height increase unless you all want it, you don't have to do that. And the 6 feet is fairly consistent, throughout some of the other towns' regulations. And then I just want to point out that sign height is based on the finished ground level, which finished ground level is measured as before you add fill.
Yes.
That's already the case.
Yeah,
So
that's the definition.
yeah,
And the thing is, if you were to take like if Sea Trail signs, they're all built up on berms,
right.
So if you brought Sea Trail sign down, it's really not that tall. If you
Well,
brought
I've
it down to
measured
the
them. They're
road.
10 feet tall from the surrounding grade. So it's-
And let me add to that. So and I think this has sort of been lost or not. Folks haven't been aware, but in section 7-23, 7.23 on golf courses, 723B6 hidden in there. It's another reason why we're working on this code audit. there are provisions for advertising sign structures for golf courses and related uses. It's already in there. The sign height of those is 10 feet.
726.
723B6.
Thank you.
One structure advertising the golf course and related services. That could be a host of things. Can be located on the premise at the major entrance. This is where we get into the 10 feet. Any sign and mounting shall not exceed 10 feet in height, and a total area of 100 square feet, illuminated only by indirect lighting. So that addresses sea trail, related uses, etc. That's the 10 feet height. But I just wanted to point that out. The non-residential, I would just add, I would specify they're asking for amenities to advertise. I would just say clearly that you may have one sign advertising pool, amenity, etc. Otherwise, we're left to somebody potentially walking in the door, hey, I want to advertise whatever it is that's non-residential. There's a host of things, and just keep to, and then when we get to it in this process, we can go down the rabbit hole more fully. That's just my take on it.
Are you giving us guidance that if we imposed 8 foot, and again, I'm looking to you, Chad, because I don't want to, and I'm good with 10 feet, but I'll acquiesce to 3 people that are more comfortable with 8 feet, and in order to get this passed. And Wes is indicating that we have the opportunity legally to do that.
To
limit the height, the size of the sign.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could just keep it the same. I don't know that the applicants requested to modify the sign.
Not at the entrance. But I'm good
Well,
with
our
8.
entrance signs didn't, well, our entrance signs, to me, it was confusing as to the height. Another follow-up question that's very important to me is the non-residential use, I believe, needs to be major subdivisions. We should not allow 5-unit subdivisions to have an amenity sign for a non-residential use in a residential zone. It needs to be at least 6, which, because we have a definition of major subdivision already.
I think that that's perfectly fine, and I think, that C can be labeled, amenity uses in residential zoning districts, and you can clarify that one monument sign shall be allowed for, pool, etc. facilities, and just make it clear.
For non-residential use, 1 monument sign per major subdivision may be permitted. I'm just adding per major subdivision in C1, first line.
And get rid of per lot, parcel, facility, etc.
Well, Chad, you need to tell us if that needs to leave. I don't know what that means, so I'm willing to let it sit.
I think that and again, I've just been on the periphery of this, not necessarily involved. I thought that evolved from, you all wanted to expand the amount of places that could allow signage in residential districts. And I'll just, I want to back up and think, really big picture here.
We don't want a sign for the pool, a sign for the tennis courts, a sign for the pickleball court.
Yep.
We want
one
amenity
sign.
center.
So I think just you could direct staff
1
to
monument
make it
sign per major subdivision.
correct amenity, and we can define amenity in some capacity, and to make that clear, and then you're being specific. I mean, there's a reason that you have different sign standards in residential districts. You're not supposed to have signs in residential districts inherently, and so if you do want to allow them, I would make it clear and be specific about it.
Allowed 1.
Does it, I'm a little kerflumped over what 6 seems to be a low number to me.
6 feet in height?
No, 6 units as the tipping point between a major subdivision and a minor subdivision.
We picked it because it already existed as a definition when it has to do with permits and what goes through town hall for what is the developer has to submit in getting a site plan approved.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I can address that very quickly. In Article 13, Appendix A, in the definitions, looking back at Article 13, which is for subdivisions, technically you do have definition for minor subdivision and a definition for major subdivision. However, if you go look into the Article 13, you won't find allowances for minor subdivisions at all. Just to give you a spoiler alert that we will be addressing that
Yes.
next few weeks.
We need to.
Thanks for the heads up.
But major subdivisions are defined as 6 lots or greater.
In the
Okay.
only in the definitions portion of Appendix A.
Correct.
Yes.
And you said
Civil year.
6 lots
Or
Yes.
more.
or more.
Yep. So if you have a 6 lot subdivision or more, that is considered a major subdivision, which has to come through this board.
Has to come through us. Otherwise, the UDO administrator can work with those site
All right.
plans for approval.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
let's revisit where we are because we need.
But going back to your question specifically,
this is a half an hour,
Yes.
and I was hoping to do it in 15 minutes.
yes, I'm good with 8 or 10 feet. It doesn't. I'm good with either.
Do I read that there is someone that is not happy with 8 feet besides Jerry, and not happy with 10 feet besides
I
Jerry?
can, yeah, I'm sorry.
I think
I'm
we're
not-
good.
I mean, I'll do the 8 feet. I'm not going to fight for it.
I'm okay.
And
okay.
I'm asking for a straw vote so we don't waste our time.
Yeah.
I'm good.
We need a
I'm
motion.
good.
All right, so to Chad, go ahead.
Up to 2 monument signs per major subdivision entrance may be utilized, provided that each sign does not exceed 64 square feet in face area. Each sign may not exceed 20 feet in overall height and 10
Overall
feet
length.
overall length and 8 feet in overall height
Yes. And
from lowest adjacent grade.
I think you need to just strike lowest adjacent grade because height is already measured unless you're intending to allow folks to bring in fill and then measure, but you've
Well,
already got established
yeah,
height measurements that
Chad,
are based on
you
finish.
deal with that.
Okay.
Then we go to C, and I would
Well,
like
wait
to.
a minute. Do we also need a motion to add the same language as C2
That's where-
as an A2?
Yeah,
And
that's
take
the-
a sec. So we have a motion to change.
Well, we don't have a motion yet. We're trying to see what
Well, we need
we'll all agree to.
So why don't we
So
just do a
also-
motion for each change and get it done that way?
Well, I'd like to do a motion for the whole thing because that's what we're trying to approve.
So in 11.8A1, we will strike landscaping shall only require shrubs and or ground cover and shall be planted 32 inches or less apart in centers. And then I will add 11.8C2 or the language from C2, which would make it 11.8A2 that will read the same as C2 permitted monument signs on the illumination part.
Yes,
Are we on the same page there?
yes. And now we go to, as Ron was saying, we go to number C,
All right.
and I would like to add one monument sign per major subdivision. Per major subdivision would be the addition.
All right. So in 11.8C, one monument sign per major subdivision amenity may be permitted.
And I think we all agreed on the 64 square feet, the 14
Yeah,
foot, and the
may be
6 foot.
permitted as long as the sign face area does not exceed 64 square feet. The sign may not exceed 14 feet in overall length, 6 feet in overall height from the lowest adjacent grade, which I will strike through.
Well, Ron's point about it needs to be not measured from the top of the berm. It needs to be measured from the adjacent grade.
Which going back to west, that's already defined.
Okay, all right,
in our
I'll
UDO.
accept that.
The sign would also need to meet the landscaping provisions referenced in section 11.8A1. Such signage in the face area and all that stays the same. Also, signs exempt from permitted requirements. We're going from directional signs instead of traffic directional signs may be provided that the sign is no greater than 12 feet in square feet area and limited to 5 feet in overall height. Strike through above
Traffic.
adjacent grade. Definition of a sign face area, fixed sign monument, and then define use.
And they're important.
All right.
Those definitions are
It's
important.
also, Katie will add this to the minute, so I need to go back through not only the recording, but the minutes, make sure this is right going to council. I'll also remind you that there is a consistency statement attached to your,
I've got it
that
here.
you'll need to make a motion.
I'd
and-
like to entertain a motion to accept the rewritten text amendment as Chad just read to us, with the highlight being 8-foot maximum height for an entrance monument sign.
My apologies, may I interject, Mr. Chair? There is a sign area calculation provided already. It's in Article 11, but there is not a definition. So I would recommend that the motion also include making sure that the definition of sign face area that's provided is consistent with what's already in the ordinance.
I will look at that.
Okay,
Yep.
Chad?
Yeah.
Entertain a motion accepting that as read by Chad. Do we have a second?
I so move.
Any discussion?
So
All
hold
in
on,
favor?
hold on. So just to help Katie out, Sybil, did you make the motion?
I did.
All right, so who made the second?
I'll second.
All right, Richard made the second.
All in, I read the motion.
Okay, all right. So we
All
have
in favor?
second, okay, all right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Then the
All right, now I'd like to
consistency
read the consistency statement. Action. We'll be picking A because we're approving it. The planning board hereby recommends approval of the proposed amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance and finds that it is neither, one, consistent nor inconsistent with the town's comprehensive plan, 2017 Town of Sunset Beach Land Use Plan, because it is silent sign
in sign
regulations. Didn't sound right, but I'm going to recommend approval, which I believe is what we all voted on. And we are for it with really out any commentary except the rewriting of the text as read by Chad just now.
Right, and then you'll need a motion to accept the consistency statement.
And we have a motion to accept that consistency statement as I just read.
I'll motion to accept the consistency statement as read by Peter Larkin.
A second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? Wow. Thank you all. And thank you, Wes, for your input. And Chad, thank you for your work. Many hours up to this point already. And Ron, again, thank you for leading the meeting last week while I was out having fun.
Watch the TV.
Well,
YouTube.
I was watching YouTube. All right, as the meeting moves on, I will note the time is 22 minutes of 10 because we do have a 2-hour limit on the dealing with the UDO audit continuation. To summarize very briefly, at our last meeting, the middle of February, we made significant progress in making it down through article. We made it through the municipal code, various sections of that. We completed that. We also completed sections 1 and 2 of our present UDO with, I think, significant changes. Now we're ready to start God bless you. We're ready to start the existing section 3 of our present UDO. I know everybody's worked long and hard on this. The first comment I have is in section 3.03. And
Well,
does
there's
anybody?
a typo in 3.01. You're talking about 3.01 B4, right? Not A4 in the first box.
Yes.
My apologies.
Talking about conducting inspections of the premises.
Yes.
Good catch. So noted 3.01, what Ron just said, Wes. The first one I have is the 3.03, which deals with procedures for the technical review of plans that come in. I would like to see, and I've mentioned this to staff before, not necessarily to Chad, but to our town administrator, that I feel strongly that either the chair or the vice chair or someone else in their absence be included in the technical review committee meetings. I find it more difficult to review site plans cold. If I had background information from a prior meeting, I think it would shortcut things quite a bit. I tend to be very detail oriented, and a lot of times my questions get answered instantly by Chad,
Right.
because I was not part of the TIC meeting. Right now, it does not, it only talks about building inspectors, town administrator, police, fire, attending those meetings. Wes, is it unusual for somebody in the plan? I know we have open meeting laws, means we can't have any more than 2. But would it be unusual or make it more difficult for the TIC process to have a planning board member present?
It's really varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but I will just, and this is, we're going to speak in general terms here. Generally, the TRC is supposed to be all staff. You know, it's various technical capacities from fire, police, UDO administrator, etc. That being said, there's not a limitation on, you know, if a planning board member or chair wanted to be present, to just be there, you know, from an informational standpoint.
Would you want a statement that no conversation?
Well, you don't need to add that because inevitably you would, and I don't think there's an issue with that member providing, you know, necessarily recommendations. The key is that depending on what it is, you can ask for things, but they may not be obligated to do those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and Jerry brought up a very good point, the last one we looked at, about having a bike rack or about an electrical plug-in station. I mean, these kinds of things, I think, are pertinent to a TRC meeting. And because the applicant is there to hear it and can then give input about why you can't do that, or no, I don't want to do that, or oh, okay, I'll consider it for the betterment of our citizens.
Sure, and that's where that fine line starts to get, you know, where you're going from an administrative approval of a site plan. I've got a piece of property. I'm entitled to build on it and to develop it. I've met the letter of your ordinance, and you need to approve it. And so that gets into, should you really be asking someone to add these things? And if you do,
We're doing it from this dais here. So
no, I know, and I'm saying, but if you really want to have more control and add conditions, things like that, that's more of a, what would be the special use permit process where you're adding conditions, things of that nature. If there's things that are inherent you feel like are important to have in the town of Sunset Beach for certain development types, then let's put them in the development standards. It says, if you meet this criteria, then you need to do X, Y, Z. If that's a bike rack, electric charging station, whatever it may be, does that make sense?
It does.
And so that's a long-winded sort of answer to saying you don't necessarily want to rebuff someone in a meeting that otherwise is supposed to be there, and you're reviewing technical details of a plan.
with that warning in mind, and we will be aware of that from this dais as well, because it's probably even more important for us to be here because we're approving or rejecting a plot plan. With that in mind, I would still like to have background knowledge.
Sure.
So I'm not reinventing the wheel sitting here. When Chad gives us the plans, 5 days in advance of this meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I can, I'm a little concerned because it seems to me that we need to be a little farther upstream in terms of these kinds of decisions and conversations. And I think I get the difference between, yes, this is a technical meeting based on agreed upon standards that are with the UDO, but I think the example of where, the planning board might just want to make a suggestion to create some goodwill. The applicants can say no, or they can do whatever they want. It's not going to be a requirement.
Sure.
But at least, and what triggered it for me is that in a very informal conversation, and I shared this at the last meeting, I was informed by Robert Hill that Riptide is having conversations with the town attorney about a master plan that Riptide is getting ready to present. And my first question is, well, why is this being done to the town attorney, and why isn't the planning board have some representation in those conversations? Because it would seem to me that we'd be avoiding a lot of conflict downstream if we could be engaged early in the conversations rather than late. Because otherwise we are put in the position of having had all these conversations and having Chad written 4 different amendments, we're now going to go, no, that doesn't work. And then you got to go all the way back to square one, as opposed to having some early conversations that can shape the dialogue.
Sybil?
But they have to follow code. We've hired these people with background and knowledge, and they know the code. They deal with it every day. Now, they're following code. If they meet code, why all of a sudden can we start putting something else in? That should be at a meeting that's completely separate. I mean, or when we're redoing the UDO, maybe adding it in. But I don't think going to a meeting with people who are following the code and they've met all the quality of the code, that we should be there and say, well, have you thought about this? Well, have you thought about, no, it's satisfying code. And I think our job is in making the code and making it what we want it to be. And then they follow it. We can't just stick it in when it's already existing.
I agree with you, Sybil, very, very much, but because I'm willing to attend the meetings and be silent. However, seeing something at a technical review meeting could bring something to the forefront for the planning board where we can see that we would like to entertain making a revision to the code so that that particular situation can be remedied.
So,
Ron?
I agree with Sybil, and I think this is where Wes was going. The problem with having up to 2 planning board people at a meeting, depending on who goes to the meeting, you're getting their biases injected into that meeting, which is a technical review meeting of the staff, seeing that the proposal meets the UDO. If we choose as a group to change the UDO, we need to do that separately such that it's equally administered across the whole town and all the developers. I mean, maybe I like bike racks, and if I go to the meetings, I'm going to ask, and we do eventually have to vote as a group on the development, so are you tinging that vote by being involved? What the technical review is for staff experts to review the developer's plans to see that it meets the UDO. If we choose to add or change the UDO, then we need to do that and have it apply evenly across the board.
Yeah.
So I agree with Sybil is now. I also don't see anything wrong with up to 2 planning board members attend this meeting, but I believe they must be silent.
Yeah, as
must be.
liaisons.
I'm willing to accept that for sure.
I mean,
Yeah,
I don't think, or not barred from the meeting.
sure.
I don't know
Well,
the
they're
language would
public
be
meetings, so you can. I mean,
They're not public
they're not
meetings.
public
They're not-
meetings.
They're
I mean, you
not
could have
public
up to
meetings.
2
They're
planning
not
board
public meetings.
can come and listen,
yeah.
but say nothing.
Yeah.
Would you consider that in your thought process from the legality of it as we go through the UDO?
Yeah.
And I think we brought I think you know our feelings generally.
And let me also back up and mention that, you know, for larger proposals, you know, and one of the things that we're going to talk about is including a conditional zoning procedure that does allow for planning board to say, hey, we want bike racks because it makes sense to us, and the developer can say, no, I don't want a bike rack, and or they could say, yes, I want a bike rack, and then you guys come to some mutual agreement. So we are going to consider those. Now, it might not be in a small project, might be in a larger project, but we're going to figure out ways that can be, you know, as part of the.
Of code? As part of code?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just
All
want to
right,
make
can
sure I
you-
understood that.
Can you put in, at least make a note to yourself, because you're the one that's rewriting this with our suggestions, that there's been a suggestion made for consideration of 1
PB.
or 2
Yep.
planning board members attending from a peanut gallery standpoint. In other words, no, I don't know that anybody knows that reference. But,
Yeah.
Yes.
I rolled it up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is everybody satisfied with
Well,
moving on?
Is staff satisfied with that being a possibility? Because I mean, the staff want the planning board. They're even silent to listen to their discussions with the developer.
Staff is going to give Wes advice on this,
Okay.
so we'll see what comes out of it.
The only thing I'll interject and say here is I would get you site plans earlier as soon as I get them in. Most of the
We're not.
no, I'm
nobody's
just
saying
saying,
that.
but I'm just, even if I do that, most of the time, and I would most of the time, like 99.9% of the time, almost 100% of the time, the first site plan I get changes.
Well, the
to-
TRC makes changes to that site plan.
Very true.
So, for the speed of, because our goal here is
Yep.
to
Yes.
put asterisks
moving.
next to things
Yeah.
so that Wes then considers them
Yep.
from a legal standpoint.
Yep.
Does anybody have anything regarding 3.04, 5, 6? Because I have something regarding 7, 3.07.
Wait, is that where the alternate is?
Yes,
Yeah.
the wording of that is, I think, backwards when it comes to 3.07, because we no longer have an alternate on the planning board.
Yeah,
And the date reference, it's referenced in a couple places for the
Yeah.
June 1st, 2016. I just caution Wes to read what we have now. There doesn't need to be a reference to an alternate or the
Okay.
June date, because we don't have an
Right.
alternate anymore.
Okay.
and probably will never have an alternate.
Right.
And not only that, if you had an alternate, the only way to do it right is the alternate shows up at every meeting. Because how would they ever be informed?
Exactly. Well, the Board of Adjustment has that same
Right,
situation.
it's like an alternate juror.
We used to have an alternate for the town and an alternate for the ETJ. We have run into one instance just lately where we didn't have enough to vote. And had we had that alternate, whether it be ETJ, which probably is never going to happen, or town, we could have voted. We could have gone on with.
But Ron brings up a point. That person needs to stay up and current on the
Oh,
subject.
they have to.
and
Yeah,
need
they have
show
to
up.
attend meetings.
We have a hard enough time getting people to volunteer for appointed positions. And if we tell them they need to show up and shut up, then we're never going to get some.
No, I don't think they need to shut up, but I think because I think they could have legitimate questions too.
I spoke.
Yeah.
That was rash.
Yeah. But yes, they do need to attend. I mean, it is a position on the planning board.
I think we've been doing fine without the alternate. Sybil brings up a good point. We need to be responsible and show up to the meetings.
Yes.
There have been a couple times we've only had 3 people here.
Not many.
But that was, we had a death in the family and
But I mean, yeah, there are real reasons that people can't come, and I definitely think there is a need for an alternate.
And you are required to have an ETJ member per statute.
yes,
Right.
and Sybil is ours.
Okay.
Yes.
But yeah, the
10
question is,
years.
we have no alternates now.
Yeah.
If it's in the code, then you technically need to have one, but you are not alone. And
But
there's
it's
plenty of
occasion-
jurisdictions that
but
say they
I
have an
guess
alternate.
if we're
that
going
they
to
don't
have an alternate, then the alternate needs to come to every meeting
it's up to
because you can't.
How does town staff feel about having an alternate? We do not have one now. Right now, one is called for that is a member of the town. We don't have a requirement, even in the old UDO, about an alternate for an ETJ. But how does staff feel about it?
And Wes can more attest to what's probably more common than where we're at now. I think if we're at now and we need an alternate, then if maybe we should look at one, and I'll get with Wes and Lisa on that.
Okay.
Moving forward, I don't think I've ever worked in a jurisdiction that had alternates to the planning board.
But you're with the ETJ, I mean, with the Board of Adjustment, and they have an
Board of
alternate.
Adjustment's critical to have alternates.
Yes,
Board of Adjustment's different,
because it's a quasi-judicial
Right.
board.
and Board of Adjustment deals by case basis, so they're not going to.
It's not a
It's
continuation.
not a continuation.
All right, consider that.
Striking alternate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd be happy with striking alternate, but
Okay.
the language here
Yep.
is, in referencing June, I think just
Yeah,
complicates things.
that's coming out of there.
And it also is reflected in 3.9,
Yeah. So,
that same June 1st,
Yep.
2016 date. God bless you.
Thank you. Excuse me.
Um,
Excuse me.
310 is something that's near and dear to me, and I'd be very curious to the other planning board members' slant on this. I feel strongly that the planning board should be able to initiate topics that they feel are important to the town, and the ordinances and adjustments the same. However, I believe that those topics need, before they reach discussion on a planning board level, need to be approved by the town council or town staff. Town council, I feel more strongly about, because we don't want to be rogue, because we've had other committees that have done that, decided what they're going to deal with. And that is not appropriate. We're appointed by town council.
Correct.
But there's nothing in here under our powers and duties that says we're supposed to be self-developed topics and provide direction on approval on changing them. At least not the way I read it.
Yeah, I mean, you could take D to, I think that while it's not explicit, you all could identify something you wanted to work on and request the town council.
But the
direct
town
it.
council has to direct that, and I'd rather have the cup half full, that we should have the opportunity to bring things through staff before town council and let them say, yes, we agree.
So if you just change that direct to support, that the town council
Okay.
may support.
Ron,
Okay.
excuse me, Ron, didn't we make a list at one point?
right, I think this is what we're getting to, is that
Yeah, but it was-
we've come up with items we would like to work on and change.
And they don't
then-
get put on the
And
agenda.
they never get put on the agenda because either,
There's so much else going on.
well, that may be true and not true in some cases. I think there might be a feeling on the council that they don't want us to do that for whatever reasons, some legitimate, some unknown. So I agree. I didn't notice this when I read it the first time. I think what Pete's asking for, and it makes some sense to me, there should be some mechanism where we can propose to council to approve us to investigate and make a recommendation on. I'll bring up one that the Burr and me was the tree protection, okay? We spent a lot of time on tree protection, then it had it killed, tabled, whatever. So if we had a way to say, okay, we would like to take up tree protection again and ask the council, and they say, yes, that's a good idea. The planning board should take up tree protection again. I think that's what you're looking for.
Well,
And
you-
have it added to the agenda.
Not tree protection, but you're
I'm thinking of
you're
an item.
on the line.
Right.
You're right on the mark, yes.
Yeah, because we had this same issue with the ERC, where the ERC went out and made recommendations, and this has been a big bugaboo in terms of the dredging. And then the town council basically ignored that recommendation.
That's not true, because I sat on town council at that time, but I
Yeah.
just want to, for the record, make that statement.
Okay, but
They
well,
thought we were ignoring it, but we
Yeah.
were not.
But I think getting the endorsement that, yes, the town council has approved this gives us some cover if we come back with something that may be more controversial. Fine, town council can
I
consider.
think Wes has
it,
come
check
up
it.
with a very good
A simple
changing the
one. Yeah.
wording from direct to support.
Yep.
Is there like, if a planning board member went to a council, well, as a citizen, that doesn't work that way. If they stand up here and say to the council, the planning board would like to address this issue, that wouldn't work that way either. Right?
Yes, it
'Cause
would.
That's just a,
Yes,
that's
it
just a
would.
public comment.
But that's fine. You're standing up at the podium as a citizen, saying you think.
I think that's what we want is the council, we want to suggest something, the council say, that doesn't mean they're going to approve it. Yes, we agreed to let you look into this and come up with your recommendation or not.
Which is support. It's
Yeah.
that one word.
So,
But there's an issue of, am I approaching the council as a private citizen whose concern must be considered by the planning board, or am I approaching the council as
planning
an
board,
approved measure by the planning board that the council must agree to support?
Mr. Chair, Wes, correct me if I'm wrong here. This is not how I would have interpreted any of this, because I think what I was going to say 5 minutes ago would have addressed Ron's probably biggest contention with staff since I've been here. And that is, items that you all have, that how do you put them on the agenda? All right. Planning or town council can direct you on anything. In my opinion, you don't need support from the council to put something on the agenda.
I'm going to disagree. We get our authority through town council.
You do, but if Ron wants to bring up tree protection, and when you're amending the draft agenda, it's like, hey, Mr. Chair, I'd like to add tree protection under new business.
You can't do
You
that.
can't do that.
You can't
I
do
was
that.
told we couldn't do it
Yeah,
because
Well,
it
you
was already
shouldn't. You
public.
can do that.
Yeah,
You shouldn't do that.
So this varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. In our active jurisdictions, there needs to be a regimented means for organizing and figuring out your work plan. In other places where there may not be an incentive or as much concern to do things, things sort of just come out and people start saying things. But I think that there's been a history here, and it's, this has happened over the course of the last 5-10 years, that needs to be clear that you guys shouldn't go off and spin your wheels on taking on something that otherwise, is going to.
Unless supported by town council.
Correct.
Yeah,
That
Well,
word there, I think, resolves
Okay.
everything.
I don't know. I guess that,
And I guess
No,
we
I'm
can
not
wa-
trying to cut you
I know
off.
this is
but-
the audit.
Two different
I-
things.
I know
think-
this is the audit, and we can further get into this
I-
when we get to the wording of it.
yeah.
But I think Katie, as our clerk, brings up a good point. Town council can add stuff to the agenda that's not on there. But as you amend the draft agenda and you add stuff on there and take it away, it has to be passed with a motion and a second and a majority vote of the board to be able to accept that. Now, as you bring the topic up into that discussion or new business, staff may not be prepared to go into it at that point, but you can direct staff, tree protection, lighting, whatever it might be, on anything in this book that I have on my computer to, hey, I'd like to look into this. Now, I've seen this instance go forward, and, next thing you know, we're talking about Phil and Oak Island for the next 4 months. I've also seen it die with somebody that wanted to limit 72 hours parked in the right of way to 24 or not at all. And he was the only person that voted on recommending that agenda item to that.
You're exactly right, and Katie's right. We have the ability to add things to our agenda. So does town council. However, it has been the spirit of this town since I've lived here starting 15 years ago, that adding things cold to an agenda and then acting on them during that meeting is unfair to our citizens because they don't see it on the agenda, they don't get an opportunity to respond to it. So town council does not add things to the agenda and then act on them. What they do is they add them to the agenda, have a brief discussion, and transfer it to the next meeting or a subsequent meeting as an agenda item.
And I will
And
say,
that's what I think we should be able to do.
and I agree with you, and you have staff's 100% support on being able to do that. And that's where the advertisement comes in, and that's where the fairness to the citizens, if there is a discussion. So,
But in this section, I guess what we're trying is in reality the mechanism going to be there for the planning board
that's gonna what.
to ask for the support of the council on an agenda item to be put on the planning board agenda.
So,
I guess
I think
you
we're
say that
talk-
word
we're-
changes
we're
it, I
sort-
feel that it doesn't quite do that.
If I may, I think we're sort of talking about two different things
Okay.
to some degree. I think what Pete and I were initially talking about is larger tasks, things that are going to take a substantial amount of time, versus more of an organizational administrative item that you just want to kind of add to the agenda that you guys want to work on. That's maybe not a big picture topic. And so from that standpoint, that smaller item, how the agenda works, who puts on it, how you set your work plan for these minor things, I don't think that that's necessarily something you want to put in the UDO. But this other item, I think, is maybe we can change the word direct to support.
I just don't want, the only things we can talk about are the things that come through staff or town council. I think we need to have, we need to develop things on our own and then submit them for consideration and then add them to the agenda. Right now, the wording is that we do what we're told. That's what I read.
Okay.
Now, the direct to support, that satisfies me.
Okay.
The other thing I'll add is the year, almost year and a half that I've been here, is that I've limited that, well, staff has limited that, especially with the future agenda item list, knowing that we were getting ready to indulge what we're in the middle of right now. After this is done, I mean, it'll be a living, breathing document.
Well, it always is.
It always is.
Oh, there'll be plenty of fixes that we will just it'll
And
have to happen.
fixing the issues won't be as abysmal as they are currently right now.
Yeah, I think, if I may, the model that Pete just elucidated, it's a model I'm comfortable with. Whether it's reflected in the language it's written, I'm a little concerned about. I mean, for me, the spirit is, to me, the planning board needs to be a little ahead of the game, not reactive. I mean, we're a planning board that assumes we're going to create, and be involved in planning, which seems to me to be more forward-thinking than reactive. So I think the language that Pete used is appropriate. It gives us the ability, if we want to add agenda items that are of major concern to the planning board that may not have risen to the level of concern with the council or the staff, we can do that. But we're still, it still behooves us to make sure that we're not, going out on, fishing trips that aren't supported by the spirit of either the staff or the town council.
Well, Tom Vince says, God bless, I've seen him up at this podium at council meetings make statements, as Tom Vince says, with his address on 31st Street, 32nd Street, whatever it was, and say, I'm chair of the planning board, but as a citizen, and make a statement about something the planning board should be dealing with. And so what town council then is regurgitates that. And we then get a spirit as to whether that's something they want us to make an investment in, as Wes was saying.
And there may be things that we have come to a consensus of amongst ourselves that seem to be something the planning board ought to be engaged in a forward-thinking area that we should be, be able to propose as an agenda item, publicize it, and then work on it in a follow-up meeting.
Doesn't B and C, isn't that what we're talking about?
I think so.
I mean, it says to determine objectives to be sought in the development of the study area, to prepare and adopt plans for achieving these objectives. Isn't that what we're saying?
Yeah.
Or am I not understanding that?
No.
Can we
What are you looking at? 310 or 311?
310.
Wait a minute, I have to go to the page before.
I think that the word support sort of. I think we got
Yeah,
it.
it satisfies me.
Maybe-
Okay. Good.
Let me throw something out. Should we have
310B.
something on our standard agenda? Like now we have like staff comments, public comments. Should there be line say future agenda proposals?
Now, see, I would not put that in the UDO.
No, I mean on our
That's,
on our standard operating procedure for our meetings.
Town council
All
does.
of that is right here.
Is that we have right now we have
must-
some sections. We
You're
have
missing
I
something.
have to
Yeah.
pull out an agenda. We have like preset
Yeah.
sections that
Right.
old business, new business. You guys add.
you can do that.
And one of the business items
Mm-hmm.
is
future
That's
agenda.
what we're
future
saying, right?
agenda items.
Would you consider that, Chad, with Lisa? Adding that
Yeah.
to our agenda?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea.
What are we
Very-
adding
I mean,
to
I
the
think
agenda? What are we adding? I'm still reading all
A line
this.
item at the end of our meeting that says future agenda items.
Oh,
So
okay.
that people hear, and if I say I want to castrate every dog in this town, and we have to vote as to whether
Yeah.
that's going to be on the agenda, and if it's 4-1, then the dogs are free.
Yes.
So-
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Well, but everything else we've
Fortunately, I
just
only
been
have
talking
cats,
about
so
are
we're
not-
covered in A
Yeah,
through
whatever,
G.
a
Everything we've just said
representative,
is here.
And I guess if
Or
we
someone
did that, then
responsible. We'll talk
the
about
council
that.
could see it and they could say, even if, say you proposed that, and one of you, for some reason got a 4-1 vote in favor, they would say, the
Yeah.
council could say, no.
Right.
All right.
I mean, like I tell the ERC all the time, you can make any recommendation to council. It's up to council to formally adopt whatever you recommend
Let's,
to them.
in the spirit of,
you were on section 310.
Yes.
Now you're talking about adding the agenda.
No.
No.
Well,
That's
Yes.
part of the
Can
UDO.
you take that out?
yeah, that was a anecdotal comment that I don't think needs to be in the record.
Well-
Because I looked at Chad and I said, would he consider that? He did not answer, but I would like that to be considered by Chad. Staff does the agenda. It's a anecdotal comment to Chad.
Okay.
I would strike it from the meeting.
Okay.
So we're going to see in future agenda items, that's going to be a line item.
He's going to consider that.
I'm sorry, say
He's
it
going to
again.
answer us.
Okay.
Staff will have to answer us.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll consider it. I think right now, just to be very transparent and honest, I'm with us working through this. I would have to see how much support I would have on each item that's added to there until we get done with this.
Well, but to add something, we have to vote on it.
Very true.
Yeah. Well, we could just do it on the first meeting. I mean, I think.
Oh, it's only the first meeting. It's not this. It's
Yeah,
not this
right,
second meeting.
okay. Good.
Regular planning board.
All right, moving forward, I like the idea on 312 that Wes had come up with, taking the word morals out of that, and we fought and fought and fought about that on town council because morals are very subjective under 3.12 for the Cameron land use plan. I don't know if anybody agrees or disagrees, but obviously Wes agrees because
I
he
strongly
wrote it
agree
there.
that needs to be stricken, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes.
But what's Wes's feel on general on what this section says? I mean, I guess from the comma, in accordance with present and future needs, best promote the health, safety, comma, morals, and the general welfare. That whole sentence. What is the art of?
Well, there's.
I mean, to me, we can only make decisions to me based on economic well-being, however you define that, environmental sensibility.
Yeah, I mean,
morals clearly is out.
yeah, you take morals out. I mean, you got to remember the zoning enabling statutes were initially based on health, safety, and welfare.
Right.
You had tenement buildings in New York City. You didn't have enough light getting down to the street level, so you created setbacks, height requirements, all these things. So there is a basis, rational basis in there on health, safety, and welfare. Doesn't mean you guys can't strike that, but there's a reasoning.
Under general welfare, what does that mean?
I mean, we can go if you want. We can figure out what that means.
I mean, does that
I mean-
include,
But
I'll give
does
it
that
you just
include economic well-being? Does that include environmental sensibility?
It says efficiency and economy also in there as well. It doesn't matter to me. You guys put it whatever you
Well,
want.
what's the? I guess I'm asking, what's the state of the art on language like that?
I said
Well,
it is based in the zoning enabling statutes.
I
and
was
so there's-
fighting with
Yep.
what Ron was saying, but I like the idea of adding an environmental responsibility.
Sure,
Yeah. And that, I think, is
we have environs in there.
Oh, we do, and it's environs,
Yep.
whatever that means.
Yep.
Okay, never mind.
all right. So are we still concerned about the term general welfare, or are we fine with that?
It's up to you guys.
To me, general welfare is the example he just gave, like when they're building the
Yeah.
tenements too close together and
We can't rewrite everything from scratch.
Right.
Yes,
I want to remove things and add things that are pertinent rather than
we can, but we'll be
No.
here, and and it's going to cost $500,000.
Yeah. So we leave general welfare and we take out morals.
That's right. It's,
Mhm.
Okay.
we take out morals.
All right. 'Cause
Um,
I'll give you an example of general welfare. In Sugar Sands, there is a property owner that put up a basketball hoop in his driveway. And what has happened is some of the teens from Artesia, house isn't occupied, come over and play basketball on that person's private property. A little uncomfortable. General welfare, why aren't we considering building a basketball court somewhere in Artesia Village? That to me is a general welfare question. So that would be an example of something that's
Point
not
taken.
necessarily health or safety, but are we providing appropriate accommodations or amenities to service the residents of a particular community?
Point taken. All right, moving on. I had a comment in public facilities, and I don't understand 3.15. I don't understand what this is. Does this include acquisition of land? Is that something the planning board should be involved in?
Yeah. So this
Yeah.
is
Because we
been
aren't.
if you ask me, I didn't want to necessarily get into this because I figured you guys wanted to keep this in here. This should not be in here, frankly. This is comes from old statutory language back when planning boards in the 50s and 60s were literally doing the work of a public works department or a planning department or whatever it may be. It's not the case anymore.
Right.
And so that's where this. Can you understand it from that standpoint? Then
We are not involved in getting a vote on whether we buy the lot across the street or not.
so
Now, we're what it's used for can come into play,
yes,
but acquisitions are made on budgetary considerations
Matters
by the
of the
town
purse.
council.
yeah, and so at least that word says may. This issue came up in the city of Southport. The exact same language is in their UDO, and it resulted in near litigation because the city granted sold an old wastewater treatment plant without reviewing it with the planning board, and the town citizens nearly sued the town over this one provision, even though the planning board has no oversight on matters of the purse. If you ask me,
Yes, correct.
So I would get rid of it, but at least it says may. So
Chad?
Get rid of it. If Wes
Yeah,
says get rid of
I'm
it, yeah.
uncomfortable. The phrase that triggers it for me is, quote, if it deems wise. That's
subjective.
And-
that very subjective.
Pete, this one goes a little bit further. I'm very good friends with the planning director in Southport, who we talk about once a week on issue that he deals with, and I knew about this issue, so therefore I don't want to ever put the town in the position to have to deal with that issue. So yeah, if Wes says remove it and you're okay with remove it, then let's remove it.
I said it's confusing to me
Yeah.
because we do not integrate into, planning board doesn't integrate into decisions for acquisition of property.
Sybil?
I'm with you all on that, but I need to back up a minute, if you don't mind. I have on sections 313 and 314, did we remove those two? Or is this my notes that when I went through it that I thought it should be removed? Because we just skipped right over that.
I skip over it if I agree with it and don't have an issue with what Wes has already made in his initial, because he wrote this. And he's
Yeah.
making some statements. If I agree with it, I don't want to discuss it anymore because I agree with it.
All
So
right,
he
but see,
said-
I have on here remove 313.
Yes, he's got that.
Yeah, my
Yes.
note is that it's redundant in Article 401.
And 314, both of them are removed.
Just
Yes.
section A.
Well, yeah.
A and B.
Yeah.
I mean,
401,
you technically
B1.
could move 13 and 14, but
No,
Okay.
and in
Yeah.
fairness, though,
Yeah.
if he writes something down that I agree with, I don't need to polish that
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
It's
But-
fine,
and-
go buy it.
Yeah, and I thought, now, when I read it, did I write this in here, or is this something we decided on? I'm confused.
So-
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
So are we removing?
313 is certainly going to be removed, and right now I would proceed, unless directed otherwise, removing 314B.
But not A.
Or sorry, 314A.
Leave
My
B.
Yes, leave. Yep.
That's the way I understood it. Right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, no. I thought both those items
Yes.
could go. My apologies. 314 A
Yeah.
and B can because B is rehashed again in Article 13 about
Subdivisions
about
overall.
when
Yeah.
it's just
Okay,
So both in its entireties.
all right, and now we're going to remove 315.
Well, we're going to remove
now
uh,
it's been
just
recommended.
one line in acquisition of public properties.
Oh, I thought we were
I
moving.
thought we were
The whole
moving
section.
Remove the
thing.
whole
Yeah.
thing.
But that's up to you all.
Okay. I I was looking at the acquisition and disposal of public property as my hot button.
Sure. That is a hot
The
button.
rest of it's superfluous anyway. It's nothing we do.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Okay, 315 is removed.
Yeah.
Okay. So 313, 314, and 315 are
Mhm.
gone,
Yeah.
Now we're on-
based on 313 and 314 being redundant to items in section Article 4, 1, and 13, and then 315 is just chopped.
On 316, and again, I'm trying to move ahead. I realize that the item has recently been removed back in early 2021 for that last sentence. Well, it's not on anymore. Before recommending any such plans to the town council, the planning board shall hold at least one public hearing. What has been established is that we have the ability to have a public hearing, that it isn't mandatory.
I know we talked about this a year ago.
Yeah,
that's why
3
the
of our
board-
5 members are currently still with us from a year ago. I'm going to default to Wes to how this is legal and how to proceed with that with an operating.
Let me make a
procedure
statement. We as the planning board in early 2000, a year ago, we voted that a public hearing, when we made a change, was not mandatory, but we could, under certain conditions, require one. A public hearing before the planning board, because there always is a public hearing before town council when a change is made to the UDO.
And Mr. Chair, I agree with you. The public hearings, I will say that there'd be the recommendation by staff to schedule the public hearings for you, if that's okay.
Well, it would be, absolutely. We don't schedule hearings
It-
anyway.
Well,
but
the
we can
council does
require
schedule
one.
their own public hearings. We can't put it on the agenda for them. We can put it on the agenda to schedule the public hearing.
Okay.
The difference would be is that staff would schedule the public hearings for you.
Yes.
Yes.
But the public hearing is not mandatory, where before it was required.
And in this section, it's a little bit confusing how it's worded. This is really referring to plans. It's not necessarily referring to ordinances. And it was something to make it abundantly clear, Mr. Chair, you had brought out, hey, we might as well, let's make this a may rather than a shall, so that there's no question here. Because if you'll see in A, it says in the maintenance of plans. And so there's.
Should we change the word plans?
You can, but remember in Article 4, we go through and stipulate that for really what we're getting at is the ordinance piece of this.
Yes.
And so I think, you can either leave this as is, and then there's 2 other options. Strike it all together because you already talk about public hearings in Article 4.
Can you say plans or ordinance revisions?
Sure. Or you could add B to your powers and duties, because B is talking about general things about, recommendations, and perhaps B should go in powers and duties. And in Article 4, you've got amendments, etc.
So Wes, you would be taking and removing section 316 altogether. A would be talked about potentially 2 more times later on in the UDO, and then moving B to powers and duties and getting rid of 316 altogether.
But
In the overtone, particularly for our new members, is that by requiring a public hearing before the planning board, what we were doing is adding another really 60 days to the getting
Anything done.
anything done,
Right.
getting it before town council. And there were certain things, and it's when we changed MR3 from 7,500 square foot to 10,000, it took 2 extra months to get it before town council, which was a feeding frenzy for developers to come in with their plans, which was not good.
No.
So now here's the point. The reason I even came here to this item is I think we've done a poor job, and I don't know that it's town staff, but at the bottom of the page, it doesn't show that was revised in 2021. The last revision is 2017.
No, I got 21.
Well, it should-
3/1/21.
3/1/21, I have it on mine.
I didn't on mine. I apologize then, because I went back to
Yeah.
look.
I have it as Amendment Ordinance 3/1/21.
What I'm looking at is the set of ordinances that Chad just gave us on a
Yeah.
thumb drive.
We do have a different one because, several times I've looked over, I'm looking here and you're looking there. We're not even in the same place.
Well,
on
I
the
know
page.
this is an old set.
Yeah.
It's hard copy and it's
Yeah,
easy
but
for
it
me to
has
turn
been.
the pages, but I've got the latest one that Chad sent me.
No, this is the book I just swapped out a couple months ago.
Me too. Well,
On
whatever mine. Mine
They
says
gave us, I
3/1/21.
gave them an old book and we got the new book and it had the 3-1 update in it.
Mhm.
Okay.
So is the book that I have the revised book or the old book?
No, all your books are current. I
Okay.
see what Pete's talking
Yeah.
about because in my
I'm
Word
looking at page
document down
311.
at the bottom, it's not changed on mine as
It
well.
is on
311.
mine.
Even though I know the word in there is
It's been
correct.
deleted.
You're
Yes.
looking, are you looking
Yes.
at page 3-11 or on the wrong page?
Let me go to 316. I'm trying to do this quickly. So
I'm
we
on
don't-
311.
Yeah, I'm on 311 as well.
I'm on 3-10. I just have on electronic file so I can word search through the whole UDO. It's the
Yeah.
one that Chad just gave us.
See, I'm on
a couple
310
weeks
as
ago.
well, and that's another thing that we look at section.
I
and not
can't have
page.
two hard copies. So, and this I already had 4,500 tabs put in it,
Yeah.
so I'm not going to do that.
Huh?
All right, never mind.
This is why when Wes and I talked about this, we decided to go with sections instead of page numbers
Okay.
because I'm on 310 as well.
Yes.
But I also have taken this, kept the language the same, and have manipulated it by spacing in other instances as well. So
I think what you've shown me is that I don't have the latest and greatest hard copy that Ron has or that the other members have. So never mind.
Okay.
It just seemed like we weren't
Calling attention.
putting a footnote in there that
Got it.
says it was amended on a certain date.
Yep.
So can we go back to 316? I think the spirit of what I think we want is that, I mean, I try and circulate internally at board meetings that I go to or public meetings that I go to at Sea Trails. Hey, planning board's meeting tomorrow. These are the issues that are coming up. Be there or be square. Well, we see what response we get. But I think there are hot button items that if the public knows there's going to be a public hearing specific to that issue,
Well, that's advertised. for
would be
public
well
hearing.
recommended.
That's all advertised.
Yeah, so, our ability to have staff arrange a specific public meeting concerning a singular issue that we know is gonna,
You do have that authority, and that you do have that authority.
okay, so is that, if we eliminate 316,
It's already in Article 4.
okay, so I guess
So
the
agree.
idea is,
A would be in Article 4, and I think it's mentioned again in another article. I just don't remember off the top of my head. And then B, move that to powers and duties and get rid of 316 altogether.
okay,
One of the main
That's an
focuses,
option, yes.
one of the main things.
Whatever's cleaner, you know
Yeah.
what we want.
Yeah.
okay, so A is out and B is being moved,
And then remove 316 altogether.
yes.
The next one I have is 318, which is 317. There were no changes recommended by Wes, and I just have a typo. It should be remove section D as
D.
in dog,
Right.
not C.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I have no other changes in section 3.
okay, well,
But
so
I'm not saying we're through with section 3. I'm just
Yeah.
saying I don't have any.
So we're removing 318C?
No,
No, what are we doing?
we're removing D as in dog, the last one.
Okay.
Well, I thought we were removing A too because it's in Article 4. So,
Well, no, that's on
That's
316.
316.
oh, 36. You're on 3,
We're on
318.
318.
but just mine is 3. All right, so we skip 317?
Yeah, because
All right.
Wes had no changes and I didn't have any changes. But you may. It's
All right.
Now, my concern about 318C is, and maybe I just need to be educated on this, the Board of Adjustment is authorized to grant special use permits as specified in this ordinance and following procedures.
Yeah.
It was the-
Okay.
That's their job.
I had
That's
had
their
made a
job.
mistake in putting C rather than D,
It's
and
D.
so
The
D is
vested
what we
rights.
want to get rid of, not
thank
C.
you,
It's
Pete.
the
for
vested
catching-
rights that you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that So do we need that language in there, or is that is that redundant as
That's
well?
redundant.
Okay.
Which one? C or D?
D
C.
is redundant.
C can stay. I think it'd be
Okay.
useful to leave C
Okay,
there.
great.
All right, I don't have anything else in section 3. Does anybody else have anything in section 3?
I just made a note for a question on 321A. What I assume you're saying on that one is remove the last phrase in that line, paragraph A, the willfully swears falsely guilty of a, you're just deleting that phrase, right?
No,
321 paragraph A, because you're saying replace criminal penalty with civil fine. So you're just getting out that misdemeanor stuff.
no, that's a language out of the general statute, if I'm not mistaken.
1 second.
Where are
I
we?
think no, Ron is correct. So there is a decriminalization statute that
Right.
basically said that everything's got to be civil.
Civil. So you're just you're just going to enter that board of adjustment period and get rid of all that willfully swears falsely guilty of a class 1 because he can't because it's a civil issue.
Correct.
Okay, I want to
think
go
that's the
back.
item.
Sorry. We did.
So that's what I understand the change
Yeah.
is going to be, correct? Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, oh, 321A?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Yes. On 319C, is there a clause similar to this for planning board members?
Sorry. 319C.
Yep. Any member of the board adjustment who misses more than 3 consecutive regular meetings, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
You have to go back to the
It's
planning board,
backward.
but I believe there is.
Yeah, I think it's the same, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right.
It's two
Uh,
consecutive.
Yeah, no more than,
What are we looking at?
It's on.
Attendance
page
for
370.
planning board.
yeah, it's on C, 2 consecutive monthly meetings.
Does, one
Okay.
quick question, does the UDO part of that process or does it count as a missed meeting? The UDO process, no. So it's
This
just
is not a
regular,
planning
just a
board
regular.
meeting.
Okay.
I was surprised we could add
319.
the sign thing onto this, but you and
That
Lisa,
is-
never mind.
Okay.
This
all
is not a planning board meeting.
Well, I just want to make sure.
So the question is, should we be consistent on that, I guess? If it's 2 for planning board, it should be
I
2
didn't
for the
mess
board of
with it.
adjustment.
I assume that it is that way because it
It
has
didn't occur to me
evolved
when I
over
read it the
time.
first time. It seems like missing 3 board of adjustment meetings.
Well, it's
is worse
subjective
than-
because
is
it
worse
says,
than missing the planning board meeting.
I mean, it's hard to get folks. So I don't know that you guys have been in the historic history of kicking people off the board for the absentee rule, but I could be wrong.
I think in general, I think this is the rule, but I think
It gives you the
it
opportunity.
gives you the opportunity. It's not necessarily, it's in there, but it gives you the opportunity.
yeah, we may remove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a case by case basis.
And I'll make just a comment. The Board of Adjustment as a quasi-legal board, evidentiary, their rules of engagement are different than ours.
Very.
Right.
Because the consequences are different than ours.
So shouldn't they be more stringent?
You can make that argument. You can make that
I will
argument.
also say this.
But I'm not going to go there
Well, I'm not going to
and
say
polish it because
Anyway.
it's
I mean, have we ever had an issue with this? Or are we arguing over something that's
Not that
never
I'm
happened?
They're not standing meetings, so usually well, a lot of times I guess they are, but you try to make sure everybody can be at the meeting before it gets scheduled.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So,
I guess there's a difference between a miss and an unexcused absence,
yes.
in my mind.
Yes.
I mean, if you're in the hospital,
Yeah.
you have a heart surgery or something,
Yeah.
and you tell your
Yeah.
chairman, I'm
Right.
going to be off for 8 weeks, you missed 2 meetings in a row, but that's an obscure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would
Okay.
agree. 100%
So I don't know,
agree.
I don't know if other wording is more appropriate than.
I don't know that it bears
But if you
modification.
schedule a board meeting or a board of adjustment meeting and then you don't show,
That's problematic. Yes.
yes. So I'm not right.
and it is different. Board of Adjustment is a scheduled meeting.
Right.
Planning Board is a monthly meeting.
Correct.
Right.
So there is a difference.
And I have three consecutive meetings, and y'all keep saying 2.
Well,
That's
two per board.
2 is Planning Board, 3 is Board of Adjustment.
Oh, okay.
So there's the question whether it should be the same or the wording is really what we're trying to get. We're trying to get at on it.
I'm happy with
Or
2,
leave it alone
and I'm
and
not
not-
going to mess with the Board of Adjustment.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may just add a quick recommendation. Bearing there's no more discussion on Article 3, we're now moving into Article 4 and Article 5. Can I make the suggestion that we at least get through Article 5 through this meeting? I know it is 10:35.
But we're less than an hour into this meeting.
Okay. All right.
I made a statement as to when we started on this
Correct.
topic.
I just
and
wanted to make sure I'd want to at least get through Article 5.
Well, but can we
I
talk
think-
faster?
Well, I think we should get through Article 5 and 6.
Okay.
We'll never get through 6.
Yeah.
6 will be
We
2
might.
meetings.
6 is a bear.
All right, are we through with section 3?
Yes.
I think so, yes.
Pleasure.
Yes.
Going into 4, the first one I had was down in 405, but there may be somebody who has something prior to that.
401.
I have one quick question.
The second dot, I guess. I had a question
Is-
on the second
Jerry
dot.
was,
I'm sorry, I
I
didn't
think he
raise my
started
hand.
talking
Go ahead.
before you.
The,
Go ahead.
The Beacon, I guess, is the newspaper that we're using for notifications,
It's the local
local.
paper, yes.
Do we do that on the website too? Notices on our website? Okay, I didn't say that.
And we send out mailers to
To the
everybody. We have
contiguous-
about 4,000 people on our email list that we send
That's
notices.
yeah.
Okay, fine, as long as it's. There's a circulation of the Beacon, it says 15,000, but
Mm-mm.
I've seen it twice.
Yeah, but that's
Well,
countywide.
and sometimes
That's countywide.
sometimes the town will advertise in the Star News if
Star
if they
News, okay.
miss the Beacon. The statute just says that it has to be in the paper by a certain time.
Can we go back to 401
Yes.
B4?
We were not intending to jump over it unless somebody had
Yeah. And
What
this
is it?
has to do with zoning changes, and it seems like it only deals with language concerning density, but in terms of the potential change in certain areas to transition to a commercial use, is there a way to incorporate that language in this, or is this the appropriate place to do that?
This is statutory. It has to be in there. You don't have a choice.
Okay.
That is right out of the statute, B4.
But I guess, yeah, well, I understand that in terms of downzoning, but it's not a matter necessarily of density. It's also could be a matter of usage. So if they want to shift from a residential zoning to a commercial zoning, how is that? Can we insert language in here to do that, or is that something that we have to deal with in other areas of the UDO?
So I guess I'm not. So remember, this is going to be an isolated incident, probably never happened. This would be if you applied to rezone my property
Right.
and you were applying to downzone my property as a third party.
Okay.
And so, one, I doubt the town council is going to agree with you and downzone my property.
Okay. But so this is dealing with individual property owners, not
correct.
Okay.
And
got it.
I doubt it will ever come up.
Okay. Cool. All right.
All right, any other?
Well, I
before-
just wanted to get some explanation
Sorry,
of what
Ron, I-
that second dot,
Where are you?
section 401, the second dot. Create a separate section for text amendment and zoning map amendment.
Yeah.
What are you, what
The
are
second
you?
dot. Oh, okay.
They're bunched in here. In my mind, they're very different things. You're amending the text of the
Right.
ordinance, and there's certain procedures that have to be followed. And then you're also
So basically, you want to split section
There'll be-
401 into two sections.
that's right.
A text amendment
Yep.
procedure and a rezoning procedure.
Yep.
So 401 is going to get split into two,
Yeah.
or another section.
They'll just be pulled out so they don't conflate each other, because there's also another additional statements you need to go along with a consistency statement for rezoning that I think can get confused
Right.
if they're not.
Well, I agree. I think
Okay.
that's the way to go. But
Okay.
I want to explain to me, I guess, the rezoning changes includes the text on the zoning.
So by statute, the rezoning
not just from zone
You're-
1 to 2.
you're modifying the map.
It's the written description of a zone also is in the rezoning.
No.
No,
That would be
that'll
a
be in
text
a text
amendment.
amendment.
Yeah. So you could
Okay.
you could modify the name of R20 to R21. Technically, that's a text amendment. But if you take your property on the map
And go
and
from
you,
R20.
to R5,
Okay,
that's
so
a
the
rezoning.
the rezoning procedure will be based on just that, changing
just that.
map changing a property from zone X to zone Y.
Which is
And text amendment includes our normal text amendment to the UDO
Yep.
and text of a zone.
text of anything in
Okay.
the document.
Okay.
Which is what we did on R3,
MR3.
MR3.
Correct. Yep.
All right, good points. Again, I'm down to 405. Anything prior to that with anybody? And my issue with special use permits, I see that Wes or somebody wanted to revise 405 Charlie 6, where there were 7, call it attributes, that would be considered when evaluating a special use permit. And Wes, I believe, is indicating that we need to be cognizant of the 4 standards established by North Carolina state law, case law,
Mhm.
which, am I correct, Wes, in assuming that that really is the same as 404 Bravo 2?
Okay, thanks.
Sorry. Which one? Where's
Which has to do with the Board of Adjustment and variances. In other words,
Oh, no, that's separate to variances. The standard, and you guys can keep all these in here if you want, but you open the door to, and we're talking about special use permit. The variance standards are specific to variances.
so that
There-
it's different than special use.
Yes, and
Okay.
there is in statute, these are not in our statute anymore. They're not in there. The 4 common standards are not in there. So it is left up to the discretion of each local government. However, there is established case law on there's these 4 things that we can ask. You ask more, that's fine, but just know that someone may say, "Hey, wait a minute, you denied my special use permit. I'm taking you to court because these other items, I'm not so sure that we've got support in the law for you to ask these." You can ask them, but just know
Can't base your decision on it.
you can. But if someone challenges it, they may have good grounds to challenge it because you're asking for something.
Can we
not
see what those are?
Yes, I can pull the 4 up. I provided them
Well, I don't
to
mean
you.
here, but I
Okay.
mean when this is done.
Yeah.
If
Ba-
we're going to knock 405 out, or knock 405,
Basically, it's the
C6.
first. It's the first 4. So it's A, B, C, D,
Okay.
in the simplest terms.
A, B, C, D, N. So E, F, G would remain?
EFG would be stricken. So A,
Oh,
B, C, and D are the 4 standard
Do you have
ones.
any white out? I just knocked the other ones off.
That's okay.
Never mind. Never mind.
I have some red ink, but so Mr. Chair, I mean that's a great question. Do you want to keep an adequate utilities provision? Adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, etc. Or they're being provided. Adequate measures are taken, for ingress and egress. And then G is fairly standard, but those 2 items sort of get into technical specifics, that
We're talking E and F.
yes, that hopefully
Well,
the
but
applicant
on-
would be prepared.
On F, I'd like to ask for maybe a traffic impact statement or something that quantifies what kind of congestion might be created by that special use.
Therein lies the issue with this item. If you guys want a traffic impact statement, then we need to say specifically that we want a traffic
It
impact
can't
statement.
just be general. And talk
Cannot
about
just be general.
egress and-
And similar to E, what is adequate utilities? Drainage, sanitation. From the applicant standpoint, I've met the 100-year standard. I've met your stormwater standard.
And I've met the county standards.
Yeah, but But a neighbor may say, well, that's not enough. Okay, well then we need to make sure that we probably have some standards. The previous four really get at land use issues, things like that. And so it is certainly fine to have these, but maybe we need to get a little more specific.
Yeah, and that pesky word morals shows up in
Yeah.
B.
That's Ron. Yeah,
Well-
Ron pointed that, and we talked about this a couple years ago.
Yeah, well, I was strongly against the whole language of that Board of Adjustment.
Mhm.
I don't even think it was
Yep.
legal in my
Yep.
mind, but that statement of what the Board of Adjustment uses to not approve something.
Well, but this
Right.
deals with the Board of Adjustment and special
Right.
use permits, and
Right.
multifamily developments within MR3 are a huge part of what we've
Correct.
created now.
Yep.
Because we've now made them special use permits,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
as opposed to use by right or whatever that
Yep.
was before.
And so, so for example, D, the requested use will be in
Which one?
conformity with the current land use plan. We can pretty well objectively look at that. Is on the future land use map, does it specify we want single family residential and low density residential, and someone's applying for a special use permit that's a commercial use? That's not consistent. These items in E and F, there's a lot to unpack there, and everyone's opinion of what adequate measures are could be very different.
But that's what we used as our basis for changing the multifamily within MR3, saying it was inconsistent with the Cameron land use plan.
That's correct, and so that's what I'm saying. Item D is certainly something that's important, but E and F talking about streets, traffic, that's fine. We can use it, but let's make sure that we're specific in what those standards are.
I'm confused right now, and I don't want to belabor this, but I think that this whole topic on special use permits probably needs some drilling down.
Okay.
And I guess I just make the statement that in the light of what we've done recently with MR3, we need to have our ducks in a row
Sure.
and take the subjectivity out of it, because otherwise we're going to get sued.
That's my concern with EF, specifically with E and F.
All right, how about just the general note that we realize the sensitivity of this
Yeah.
with the Board of Adjustment and special use permits? I had nothing else in 3.
Wait a minute, we're in what?
In 4.
I'm sorry.
405,
I'm sorry. I had nothing else in 3 as well.
Yeah, okay, neither did I.
Yeah.
So in 405, what I guess where we're leaving this at is we need
We'll
a
consider.
more comprehensive rewrite of sections C, all of C, right?
Well, all of yes,
And
where it deals with special use permits, yes.
Board of Adjustment action, right? Yeah. So we're looking for include.
It's really item 6 under there,
Right.
I think. Well,
C
I-
sticks.
correct me if I'm wrong.
All the
but yeah,
letters
yeah.
need to be kind of considered each one for its correctness, comprehensiveness, and applicability, right?
Yes.
Because this is where the rubber's going to meet the road in terms of future multifamily
Yeah.
development.
And
Well,
because remember, we have the land use plan in place that lays out those things as a community that we want to see developed. And so, a big piece of that special use permit is the consistency with our long-term vision of the town, which is spelled out in the land use plan.
Can you, where specifically in the land use?
I'll
plan?
give you.
All through it.
All through it.
A lot of it has to do with the questionnaire that was sent out to the citizens and their specific responses to that questionnaire.
Yeah, we had something like 800 survey responses.
Wow, good.
And so you got policies that coincide with the feedback. You got a future land use map that coincides with it. I mean, one of the things that I hate to talk about this all the time, but the golf course fairways on the future land use map are identified as conservation or recreation. And so, for example, if someone had a multifamily proposal on a fairway, the consistency determination would be it's not consistent. The Board of Adjustment would have grounds to deny that application.
Okay.
That's a cut and dry example of that. Or if the density that was proposed in one of the areas that is for multifamily right now, you can do up to 21.7 units per acre in the UDO. The land use plan says 13 point
Yes.
something.
Yes.
So that special use permit that the applicant could propose 21.7, the Board of Adjustment or staff could say, hey, that they're proposing a density that is too high. And so it would be staff's recommendation that they coincide with that. And so those, those, the main part of that from our standpoint, from staff standpoint, special use permit is consistency with the land use plan. That's why the land use plan can be so important.
Okay, so in terms of ruling authority, the land use plan is above the UDO.
No. The only and it's not regulatory, and frankly, you can be someone can be inconsistent with the land use plan from a special use permit standpoint, or a rezoning, or a text amendment, but it provides guidance.
Okay, and an instrument that the staff or the town could step in and say no.
That they could use that as their reasoning.
Okay.
Yes, it's guidance, like
Yes.
you said. Anything else on 4?
Yep.
Now that we've
Sorry.
I think done some very pertinent stuff on 4.05.
And,
Yeah, and I guess my question is, are we gonna come back? It sounds like we're gonna table this and get more refined.
I will provide something that we'll all discuss, when we get to it in the draft language. It'll either be a compilation of this, or part of it will be revised, and then we'll figure out what you all are comfortable with.
Okay.
and again, some of the same thing we talked about before, getting the morals out, and then do we add a environmentally responsible thing? Do we divide traffic? Do we include economic issues in here, which to me are more objective judgments than some serious subjective judgments that can be made.
Yeah.
Consider it.
Got it. Okay.
On 4.06, I like the idea of adding the 12-month rehearing period, because otherwise it was undefined.
Okay.
So that was good, and I had nothing in 407. So moving on to 405, if that is the pleasure of the board.
5.
Yes.
Article 5, rather. Well,
And in 01, what exemptions?
minor and major site plans are wacko. By wacko, the definition of a major subdivision is one thing. Then when you go into minor and major site plans, you would think that the word major and minor would be the same, but they ain't. And one has to do with duplexes and no more than 2, single-family dwellings, temporary uses. I think it's important that we try and get some definitional consistency between major and minor site plans, major and minor subdivisions, and have some linkage between them. I know we use them for different purposes, but to me, it's very confusing.
Yep.
Okay.
Hello?
Does that make sense to the planning board?
Yes.
Yeah, no, we were definitely get into that difference between major and minor site development plans and major and minor subdivisions. This is kind of one thing on staff's biggest wish list is getting into what we're going to go through in Article 5 is some changes.
So, Ron, you had a question about
And on 01, it says revises to clarify more detail of exemption. I guess I couldn't even find any detail of exemption. You're saying we need a detail of an exemption there?
the project. There's the UDO administrator or designate may waive, and the waiver is really the exemption I'm alluding to.
Where
may,
is that at?
That's at the second paragraph, second sentence. UDO administrator may waive the required development review process only in the following cases. And so that's
So in other words, spelling out what the possible waivers are.
well,
doesn't
yes,
say.
and explaining that perhaps we don't need a And I also believe you do even probably need at some degree of some site plan, even if it's somebody putting sketching out on a GIS map saying that I'm not going to encroach into the setbacks, so the town has got some record of this. I'm not suggesting that we need to get a survey involved for every time someone wants to put a shovel in the ground, but we need some, and that's a whole nother discussion, but they still need a zoning permit. It doesn't exempt them from not coming in here, and so it's a little bit inconclusive. That's
Well, I would hope that the UDO administrator, Chad, would take that into consideration, would not just say, oh, that sounds good.
Yeah.
You'd want something substantive.
For the record, the UDO
Yeah.
administrator does that already.
But we have to assume that that would be what you would do.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, again, you can ask Katie that works in a heating and air company to bring a site plan because they want to alter and remove a HVAC stand. So yes, your UDO administrator does that currently.
but we want to.
Was that the point you were making, or?
Well, I'm making a point. I'm asking, I'm not making a point. I guess I'm asking a question. It says here we're going to clarify more details of exemption of the development review process. And when I read it, I didn't see any exemptions until he pointed out the word may waive.
Yeah.
May waive like creates exemptions. So now I see that. So it's really at the discretion. The exemptions are in Chad's head.
Yeah, I think that
Hand or head?
Head.
Yeah.
It's at his discretion to determine an exemption.
As long as it doesn't violate
Anything else.
Anything else.
Right.
And this is something that you and I also should have discussed in more detail. But so if someone wants to do a small accessory structure surveyor or hand sketch on GIS,
I've always had the rule of if it's too close for me to be comfortable with, I can then require a survey.
yeah,
It could be more importantly that somehow, you and I can discuss this, even doing a final inspection on such accessory structure. But we can talk about more, but I do take provisions to make sure there's no encroachments into setbacks.
and he does, and Chad does a great job, but Chad may not always be here, and so you want to make sure that there's not too much burden on the UDO administrator, because if I'm somebody, I'd come in and say, well, you can waive that right here.
Right.
Why aren't you waiving that? And
Right.
so we want to have some safeguards in
So you
there.
want to look at this, some
Yeah.
guardrails
Yes.
that they
Yeah.
can waive, but, or is it better to say, oh, you can't waive like setback requirements?
No. Yeah, you can never waive setback requirements.
That's already someplace else.
This is, I think, speaking to what I was alluding to, whether to have a full-blown surveyor site plan versus some other means of displaying what it is that you want to do on your property.
It becomes the conversation of, well, this is something that can be waived. And it's like Ronald Bruno coming to me is like, I want to put a 10 by 12 shed in my backyard. Okay, cool. Well, I need a site plan. Well, your UDO says that I don't have to have one. You could waive that. And my question always back is like, okay, I can waive it, but how am I going to know if it doesn't meet setbacks or not? So therefore,
Unless
I'm
you
requiring
provide
it.
me something.
Yes. And so then there lies a question for, the reality of, do we want to require that person to get in line with a surveyor for a shed, or do we want to say, which you can, look, find me an old survey that you have or something and indicate where this is going to go, and then it's not going to go into the setbacks. So in the event that it does, we've got record you telling us it's not going into the setback, and then we can enforce that.
Well,
From
I
that
think
standpoint.
anybody should have the burden of knowing where their property line is before they put an accessory structure up to make sure it doesn't. Well, they should. It's
Well,
They rejected my drawing because it had too many dimensions on it.
you did it in metric. That's
But
I had a
it-
whole layout drawing showing where the pad for the generator was with dimensions from the lot line, from the wall to the nearest window to the nearest door, because that's a requirement from safety requirement. They said there's too much information here. Just tell us where it is to the lot line.
I will
Well,
never tell anybody they have too much information on there. But
But isn't it also more than just the sight line, or also the amount of property they can have impermeable, I get impermeable.
Impervious.
Yes, so
Yeah.
that's a whole
That's
nother
a whole
question.
nother-
And so that's, I mean, so
Yeah.
that's not just where your
That-
setback lines are.
That's correct, and that's what we're getting in here to sort of talk about. You know, what's the baseline? What's everyone's comfort level with certain things? I'm not suggesting, Pete, that someone build a 900 square foot detached garage, et cetera, without a site plan. But the smaller than 150 square foot something
Yeah,
would
one,
be.
one of the things that Wes is
Yeah.
getting at is that I think it is a little unfair. Somebody wants to build a 12 by 12 structure provided by Lowe's and then spending more on the survey than you are on the structure. When it comes to houses, it's a little different.
But they still should be responsible to be able to identify their property.
I'm not
Yes.
saying they don't need a survey. I
Right,
think
they
that
could take their existing
they need
survey and
it.
draw it
The
themselves.
site plan
Correct.
is always required.
Yeah.
I guess
But is
what
it fair to require more than a site plan for something
No.
such as an accessory
No, it's
structure
not.
that's going to cost them more than the structure's actually worth?
Yeah, because unfortunately, particularly in some of the early developments, the surveys are in quote unquote, I remember my survey, it said informal, not official. Right? So I had to go back and do an official survey based upon the Latin long
I
lines.
don't even know if they still do that
Yeah,
anymore.
they
Most of the time, if it's stamped by the surveyor.
Right. Yeah, now they are.
Yeah.
But, for
So
instance, Sugar Sands, 1991, those surveys are kind of,
we need to move on. So I
What
guess
do
the
we need
question-
here?
So
What
okay.
what are you guys leaning towards?
I-
What I hear is that the May waive is vague.
Yeah.
Do we want to lead towards more detail of allowed exemption
I think we
or
just need
more
to
detail
specify.
of what you cannot accept?
I think there's going to be a range of things that are needed, from potentially a hand-drawn sketch for a very minor things to a plot plan to a major site plan type of a situation. And there'll be gradations of those. And so that we're not getting into this waiver business.
So you think that it needs to be rewritten to say that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Anybody disagree?
no,
No.
I think it's good.
So-
I want to point out that we're now at 11 o'clock.
Well, we started.
We started late.
This is 2 meetings.
Okay.
We started the first thing off with sign, and that was at 22 minutes of
All right.
10.
Okay.
So we still have another
40
34 minutes to go.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, 5.02,
the
the only question I had was the last dot, remove the requirement for title.
yeah,
Why would we want to do that?
we've been burnt by that.
Pete knows where this one
Yeah.
arises from.
Don't you always want to make sure somebody has title to the property before they're going to even
We thought that was
waste the town's
overstepping our
time to issue a
bounds.
permit?
But it is not. We're not title attorneys. We assume the the burden should not be on us to do a title search for everything that comes in the door. Now, there's certain things that, if someone's doing a rezoning or whatever, we'll be sure that we look up at least on the GIS, and there's other things that you'll look
Right.
up to make
But
sure
that's
that
not what
owners
this says. Require a copy of a deed or other instrument under which the applicant claims title. That's all it's asking the applicant to provide.
Yes.
Whether it's a fraudulent title or not, all
Is
your
this
requirements
being-
provide something.
And this goes back to the project on the west end. And
That's my end.
no,
No, this is west end of the island.
Island, yeah.
yeah. And in that case, perhaps if that deed was provided, I don't know that it would have potentially stopped anything. Anyways, it could have maybe.
Good outcome. So
It was a good outcome, but it was separate of whether or not that was.
Yeah.
I know of no place that has this provision in place.
Okay.
I will say, and so, do you want your UDO administrator serving as a de facto land use attorney, reading deeds and so forth?
Well, I think if someone has offered a good faith suggesting that they have title to the land, then it proves that they don't. I mean, now we're talking commercial fraud issues.
And here's the other thing that I also didn't mention. Now 160D gives folks that someone has a contract to purchase property, they are by law can be an applicant. So
Mhm.
you got another issue there
Or they don't have title yet.
where they
so
don't
it's-
have title yet. Yeah.
Right.
May
Now
not get it.
they can have a designated agent,
Yeah, but
Okay.
that's a good thing because they want to follow it through to see if it can be developed as they choose
Right.
before they
purchase it.
cast the stone.
Yeah.
Yes.
The other thing is that staff is not trained to read title and deed documents. It's where we have a town attorney, if it ever comes into question.
So, what was your reason for removing? The hair on the back of my neck went up just like Ron's when I saw this being removed. And I hear what you just said, Chad. But to me, presenting a title and researching a title are two different things.
Now, if it's Wes's interpretation of title or making sure that the GIS and everything lines up, then staff already does that.
But you're not going down the rabbit hole in the register of deeds to see if there's an error in the chain of title or I mean there's a reason why you've got title insurance. You pay somebody to,
Right.
to check
I
the
guess what
title,
My
this is
thought
also
that is,
one of the
my
reasons-
thought that is he didn't have people submitting things for things they had no right to do because they didn't have ownership of the property and or I guess at this point you're saying a signed contract to own the property
yeah.
so that you're bothering the town to look at something where they don't have any reason to bother the town to do it.
This has never been. I don't think this has ever
Been
been
an
an
issue?
issue except for in this one case that there's some questionable.
I guess maybe some sort of simple statement on our paperwork
and
saying
in that
that you
event,
are the legitimate owner
I
of the
think it would
property.
have arose to the. It's going to get to the attorney anyways. But someone's not necessarily going to go fill out a site plan or do some work on a property that they don't own, right? I mean, they could, but I mean, if you want to come build
No.
a very nice pergola on
Yes, I
my
get that,
house,
right.
come on.
All right.
But it can stay in there. I just think that the enforceability and the
Well,
reality
there are,
of it.
there are, I don't know, I don't
Well, it says
understand
claims-
these theft things that people pull off on people where they steal
Yeah.
the deed. What does going to a town and getting a permit to do something that you've done, does that now draw the town into that? I don't know. It did, like Pete said, it's like,
Yeah.
raise the hair on the back of my neck is that,
But it does say claims title.
Right.
It doesn't say produces title. It doesn't say
Right.
anything
And I think
other
that's
than
where
claims.
the GIS comes in because there's ownership on there. And also, I mean, I know on paper applications, I know everything was on the portal through online submittal now, but that's why I always require the printed name and the signature of the applicant and make sure that the signature was just as important as the printed name. So, because there's,
All right. How do we move on?
just agree to take it out, I guess.
Well,
Is this currently being?
I'd like to keep it
enforced?
in.
I'll be honest, Pete, this is currently being enforced by making sure that the GIS is right and making sure that to the letter of this, no, it is not being enforced as far as I've not received one
I know
claim.
of no local government that does this.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
It becomes a I mean, it's a problem all the way around, but it's not being enforced to the fullest extent. I've not gotten one claim or deed or title submitted within every application that we get in.
How should we move? Because I know we came under extreme criticism for not requiring a title on the west end of the island.
And that and that question of title, it didn't matter. I mean, I could have claimed title to that. That was going to have to get sorted out somewhere outside of the town,
Okay.
in court.
So you think we should remove it?
I do. I mean,
Okay.
Okay. Anybody
Well,
disagree?
well, I am a little concerned. I don't think it's incumbent upon the town to validate it, but I do think it's important that it be presented to the town, and then if, in hindsight, it proves to be invalid, there is standing, town has standing, the citizens have standing to contest.
They already would without even having to provide, provide it up front.
So you're saying that,
You're not taking away your authority to to say that this permit was issued in error because you're not actually the owner. You already got that. It's already there.
where?
It's in statute,
In law.
in law. I mean,
Yeah.
you already have. I don't know if it says it in here specifically. It probably does.
But I guess my issue is typically in situations like that, there's a moment of present, because this is something we went through with my consulting work with 8840. There is somewhat of a requirement. You have to present to us that this is what you're claiming,
Mhm.
as opposed to it's just out there. No, if we discover it at some point, this is a point of action that now you can say, no, you said to us that you own this. Right now, there's nothing in here that says I own it.
Isn't there something on our application form when you're applying for a permit to do something that makes some, that you have standing
Yeah,
to
you're
deal
the
with
owner.
this property?
You're the owner, or you have a designated agent form, and
So
then you're under contract.
And that's
So-
all we're really looking for, isn't
Okay.
it?
Yeah.
So that exists in the application
Yes.
process.
In the
and
permit
staff,
app-
you're comfortable with
Permit
Yeah.
application.
it. Okay, then take it out.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, moving, I don't try
We're
to
fine.
step on anybody, but
Is
moving
it
along,
I have to find it.
502, I kind of have some issues with the, I think a non-binding meeting helps both parties, but whether it be mandatory or not is not right.
And we don't need to go down this rabbit hole. I mean, do you want my reasoning for it?
Yes,
I don't want that shall statement to provide a hiccup, a procedure that potentially wasn't followed. Chad can tell you that anytime he's going to receive something, I would say very rarely is someone just sending you something out of the blue.
Very true.
And so the way the formality of this doesn't coincide with what happens in reality. There's a phone call, there's emails, there's stuff that's happening before someone submits something already. And so it just seems to me that it's, kind of.
so you think this is just another step that really is
I
done
agree with-
anyway? It doesn't really need
I
to
agree
be
with-
mandatory and
I agree with Wes on this one. I do use pre-application meetings, whether it would be in here or not. Very rarely do I get somebody just walk in the door and say, I'm submitting this, and lays it down and I don't know about it. The shall, and I'll give you an example. If this is missed, for example, somebody comes in, it's missed, that doesn't happen, then all of a sudden we get to a planning board meeting that on a project y'all may or may not like, let's go with may not like, and then realize staff didn't go with the pre-application meeting, you could therefore deny it. It's like, well,
Got it.
you didn't do this, so therefore you've got to go.
Or
back.
if it's a project you really wanted to see, wow, this is a great project for the town. A neighbor came in and said, wait a minute, I'm going to challenge this on the grounds that they didn't follow this. And so,
okay. Anybody have any gas with that?
The biggest
No.
thing with the
I think the logic
pre-application
is-
meeting
is
is not only the staff really know what's coming before them, but making sure the applicant knows pre-submittal dates. Therefore, they don't say, hey, I'm submitting this on the Friday before the planning board meeting, for the upcoming planning board meeting, and realizing they've already passed the submittal date. So all that happens on phone calls, emails, just like Wes says.
Sure.
Okay.
So it's held, but in different formats and
Yeah,
different
absolutely,
types.
yes.
Okay. All right. Are we
So
done?
just to be clear, we're taking out, what do we take?
502, I guess we can pretty much take the whole thing out.
Aren't we just talking about 502B? Oh, okay, no, you did
I
A.
think we're
Okay,
talking
got
about
it.
the whole thing.
All right, yes.
All right, 503. 503 is just a whole bunch of stuff about minor and major site plans, which confuses the hell out of me. Yes.
On this, and which I found quite ironic last time we did the coastal outfitters, that they did not have approval from NC DOT yet or stormwater management.
Well, that's
approval.
where these things are going
So
to come into
It would
play.
behoove us to make sure that the applicant at least applies for permits from NC DOT or the other necessary.
And that's where Wes made a point with this, referring back to the Board of Adjustment thing. Now you bring it into here, where if you want a state stormwater permit from the state submitted before, this is where it needs to be specific. TIA study, if required, needs to be specific. And the biggest thing with staff is the wish is, and I'm just throwing it out there because this is what 503 is talking about, separation of a major and minor site development plan. You separate them both. All right. Anything under 10,000 square feet is a minor, and it's a staff level approval and procedure. And anything over 10,000 square feet on a commercial building would then become a major. The same requirements would be the same for both, but it would be kind of avenue of what's required to go to planning board and what's allowed to be done at a staff level.
And coastal outfitters was how many square feet?
The new one,
The new one.
9,000
they were up
something.
eight, I think 9,200.
It was under, it didn't need to be sprinkled.
I mean, sprinkled is not going to be anything that y'all or we or me ever look
It's
at.
12,000.
It's going to be building code, which Carrie and Richard and Paul go into at every meeting anyway. So, I mean, you want to make Paul, Richard happy anytime is when somebody volunteers to put a sprinkler system into anything. But the requirement by code, not by the UDO, is 12,000
Yeah,
square feet.
yes, it's code. And I was very surprised at the answer because I was listening to you guys. I had an objection to the minutes about the deceleration lane, and I find it I find it puzzling that they can make the person putting in these 3 units pay for a decel lane when the outfitters and Dollar General are getting benefit from it. So that's why I thought the DOT was paying for that decel lane.
Now, and it becomes the situation when Coastal Outfitters and Dollar General went in there now, probably more Coastal Outfitters than Dollar General. Coastal Outfitters store, the existing one, not the new one, had to submit for a North Carolina Department of Transportation driveway permit, which allowed them to come off of a DOT road onto their property, which and required them to install measurements, which you see now. Now, that was done before the roundabout was ever existed. So you have different things and shortened because of the roundabout and easements that created that entity. But now you have another smaller, but still 9,200 square foot building coming in. So you're creating more traffic on there. So therefore, DOT will look at that and say, hey, this is fine.
So the last guy to the party gets screwed.
Yeah.
Potentially, yeah. But again, that's another thing where it needs to be, if we want that submitted in before as site plan requirements, it needs to be specific in there.
Well, it was shown on our drawing as being required by DOT.
But the DOT permit was not required to be submitted before.
Right. Or was the stormwater permit?
Correct.
And those are two things that there's two different ways to think about them, because depending on if it's just a site plan and it's, they meet the terms of the ordinance, they may already feel like, hey, we're going to get our entitlements, we're going to get our site plan approval, so I can go ahead and invest the money, get my stormwater permit, and get my NCDOT permit. But if it's a matter of question of a special use permit or something, they want to get their entitlement first from you all before they invest the time. And so it's sort of a question, of what you should require. And the other thing to remember is, if you feel like you guys want to make recommendations or substantive change to site plans, the time to do it is before they've got their stormwater permit in place. because if there's changes, then that stormwater permit gets thrown out the window. And so unfortunately, it's not as simple as saying, hey, do you have your stormwater permit?
Not
You can
necessarily.
require, you can require it.
At least apply for the permits.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they'll even apply for them without, because they got, and you guys can
It goes
require,
back and forth.
yeah.
It becomes a chicken and an egg.
Yeah.
It becomes a chicken and egg whether or not they want to do that. Again, pay for the engineering and everything that would necessitate getting the stormwater permit.
Well, I guess the first question we have here is the delineation between a
The
minor and a
delineation.
major.
Yes.
Yes.
So why don't we discuss, we
Yes.
need to, because I guess we know a major when we see one, but I don't know what a minor is really.
Well, it says it's a single-family dwelling.
So that's just single family dwelling.
That's
it's
like
one
your house.
Yeah, and that's it.
Or a multifamily development less than 2, not exceeding 2 units.
Where does it say that?
I'm looking at 503A, unless I've got an outdated one on my hard copy here.
I got a ordinance 3.1 on this. All it says in minor site plans, projects requiring minor site approval are single family dwellings, temporary uses.
Yes, that'd be a minor
That's
site
it.
plan. So that would be expanded to be any non-residential under 10,000 square foot.
But we don't say that, but we could.
We could.
We
That
could
would be
say single family dwellings, comma,
And
under, and we could
Multifamily
add
was taken
one.
out of it.
Oh,
I
you were saying
apologize.
add commercial,
Mhm.
commercial, retail, whatever we call it,
yeah, non-residential
comma, under
up to a threshold, and then
X square feet.
Mhm.
and then also probably a certain number of units attached. And this would be another thing we talk about. Is it 10 or more units that triggers a special use permit? Is it 6 or more units
Well-
attached that triggers a special use permit? And so if it was, say you wanted 6 units as a special use permit, then it would be under 10,000 square foot non-residential, and up to 5 units residential would be a minor site plan. And that would be, if someone did a
Townhouse.
a
Not
5 unit. Yeah.
Don't we, Ron's point though, don't we need to spell that out?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a word.
You guys have to figure out what your comfort level is with that.
Uh-oh.
I can tell you, I can,
How much time do you have?
I know. I can provide you what other folks in the region do, in a general sentiment. 10,000, anywhere to 5 to 10,000. 10,000 is typically a good, trigger. I know that's a large structure. You guys can make it 7,500, 5,000, whatever it may be that you feel comfortable with.
And this is the size of the structure, not the parcel.
Correct.
Okay.
It's under, square footage.
Okay.
Um,
The Dollar General, for instance, is how many square feet? Do we know?
5, wasn't it?
Somewhere between, I would guess somewhere betwing 5 and 7.
I think it was 52 something or
I
other.
don't know.
I
didn't
bet
do
that
project.
that's almost 10,000 would be my guess. They usually don't do anything less than 10,000.
Yes.
Um,
The threshold I've worked with in various jurisdictions has been 10.
All right,
Well,
how
I
about
think
if-
that has something to do with the relative size of the town. And because we're dealing with a somewhat smaller footprint, we may, I mean,
Well, I mean, even in Burgall, which is a smaller town than this, it was still 10,000.
10,000.
Yeah.
But I guess my comfort level in terms of deceleration lanes, I mean, by that standard, the new coastal outfitters, the old coastal outfitters wouldn't be required to create a deceleration lane. Is that
Well,
how
the-
I
no,
read
no,
it?
they still would. They still would.
But
They
that's
just,
a DOT
That's a
requirement.
TOT.
yeah.
Okay.
Just
All
to,
the
just
same
to be clear,
requirements have to be met.
yeah, the same requirements will be met for both minor and major.
Okay.
It's just we're defining what would be constituted as a minor.
All right,
versus
So
a
because you
major.
look at dwellings, first of all, residential dwellings, we
Where-
have a whole pile of residential dwellings. We have dwellings, we have duplexes, dwellings, 2-family or duplex, dwelling triplex, dwelling single family, dwelling multi-family, dwelling condominium.
Yep.
So obviously we clearly say right now, single family dwellings, and there's a complete description of that.
Mhm.
So the question is, do we expand that to allow dwellings, comma, duplex?
Well, it used to say multifamily developments
doesn't
not
now.
exceeding 2 units, and
Yeah.
that was stricken at
Yeah.
some point.
Yes, and that's because right now anything 3 or more attached will require a special use permit.
Great. And we did that. We did that.
Did that last summer.
And
And I
during
had a
that
propo-
process, we had the question of, well, should we make it 10 or
Right.
8?
I
or
wrote
what?
up a request for an agenda item that went nowhere
Yeah.
Because
of having a
they're being
delineation at
submitted
12
three
units.
just
duplexes.
the
Drop it.
again, spoiler alert,
Yeah.
when you flip the page in Article
One
6, you'll
under
see that in section
Am I
6.04,
stupid?
you will see that moving, and I'm not trying to get ahead here by any stretch, but we will address what exactly you're, and encourage that change in there as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Well, some of
Okay.
these things, a lot of these things are interrelated.
They're
Yeah.
they're interrelated. Yeah.
So-
So just know, because you're talking about it now, it will be addressed later.
Right.
Yes,
But we have to be consistent.
yes, and
So
we will be.
If we put it in 04, that 12 units or 6 or 8
Yeah.
or 10 or whatever number we pick
We're
is there.
stuck where
It's
there's
got to
no
be here
six.
too.
And look, if you guys come to some general consensus on where you want to delineate these, doesn't mean it's done. We're working. We'll be
why
working
don't
on
you
this.
why don't you stab it, take a stab at
Okay.
it, and then when we come back, we'll at least have a baseline to start
Okay.
from.
Before we start, is 10,000 a non-starter, or should we start at 7,500 square foot? And
I want to be clear on, because it sounds
Start
like the
lower.
difference between
Okay.
major and minor doesn't impact the requirement for stormwater, doesn't impact the requirement for
No, it does not.
NCDOT.
Correct.
It has to
So
do with
what
site
is-
plans.
What is the delineation that we're making?
A
Is
minor and a major,
between a minor?
all
is it-
majors have to come through the planning board, all minors will
It's-
be
it's
done at
site
the staff
plan
level.
Staff
approval.
takes care of it.
Okay,
Oh.
so
So
that takes
technically,
care of it.
right now, anything non-residential has to come through this board, whether it's 2,500 square feet or anything or whatever.
So-
I'm saying that I want more.
well,
Hey,
You want more discretion, so in
and,
essence,
and, and,
so
and to
I
be
guess.
fair with the being, I guess, more builder friendly, allowing a 10,000 or 7,500 square foot building to be done at a staff level.
Right.
All right, I'm
And
going to
planning-
take back what I just said.
I don't know that it's necessarily builder friendly. I'll say this as a third party, not staff, and one where there is an investor, whatever, for some reason, as irrational as it may be, they don't want to go to the planning board, even though it's the same rules. You tell them, well, you got to go to the plan. I'm
I'd rather
not.
sit down with staff.
That even though it's the same exact rules, that you guys have to approve, and you know this, you have to approve the plan if it meets the requirements. And so it's figuring out, for you guys, hey, and then for staff, if I'm staff, I want to have a second set of eyes on a big major project. I don't want all that burden on me. So, so it's figuring out where that threshold is. If it's 10,000 square feet, that's fine. Anything over, everybody's eyes are on it. Anything less, we can say, hey, we can get this taken care of. We need to get your site plan approved. You don't have to go to planning board, and you're clicking along and helping
Well,
your
if the rules are the
business
same,
community.
then I'd rather arm Chad in the planning department with what they're comfortable with.
Okay.
It's,
And what I'm hearing is, in terms of, I mean, you do the day-to-day stuff, in terms of what would be best for you, 10,000 square feet's the number.
I don't see where 10,000 square feet is listed, but
No.
It won't be. It will be, but it's not in here now.
It's in the.
We're going to
it's-
make that the
It's on
Yeah.
503, the second bullet.
yeah.
Oh,
It's not in the UDO.
Right.
Yeah.
It would be.
So
So we haven't defined what a major site plan
That's
is.
what we are just talking about.
Okay,
So,
so a
right.
major site plan would be 10,000 or
10,000,
more.
you do it, and that'll give us a baseline to
got it.
because,
yeah.
Perfect.
I mean,
But
what
we're-
you send us is not going to be a
Absolutely.
gospel. It's,
Yeah.
Okay. When you get into, I don't care whether it's 10,000 or what,
Yeah.
that's not it. But when you're getting into 3 or more units,
Mhm.
it has to have,
Well, that's a separate conversation that I think we're
I
getting ready
understand
to
it's a
have.
separate conversation,
Yeah.
but I'm trying to understand it. So the 10,000 doesn't even apply there if it's 3 units.
Residential units.
Residential,
start
yes,
right.
I'm thinking
Yeah.
townhouses or
Correct.
something.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
I just wanted to make sure I
Yeah.
understood that.
And we'll get into that.
Okay, that's fine.
So we're saying a minor site plan is something that's going to be X square feet.
yep, less than 10,000.
We'll say 10,000. Now we can discuss that if that's a little
Yeah.
too high or not.
Yeah.
And also all the residential types,
Well,
single, duplex, triplex,
So do you
quad,
wanna
up
talk-
to 10,000 square feet.
No. We
No?
would base that. We would base that on a unit count. So non-residential is commercial, retail. You do square footage, gross square
Okay.
footage, and then attached residential units. We would have to figure out what that threshold is: 6 units, 5 units, because right now 3 or more units is going to the Board of Adjustment for a special use permit. That's
Only
maybe
2 units, no. 3 units, yes.
yes, and so that's maybe a little harsh.
Right.
The triplex, that depending on whether your comfort level where it's already permitted, can just go to staff for approval. If it's 6 or more units, maybe it bears having some consistency review with a land use plan, etc. I don't know. That's
Yeah.
where
Well-
we would probably say
Thinking down the road, though, what we allow as a minor site can be a lower number to what we decide needs a special use permit. We could say 4 or less is a minor site plan.
Yeah.
And we could say 12 requires a special use permit
No, you say 5 requires a special use.
you could. So
in
then
604 or
so
whatever.
then
it is.
you would put 5 to 7 unit would be a major site plan.
Yes,
Yeah, you could do that too.
right.
Yep.
I mean, right. That if it's 4 down could be included in the minor site plan
Yep.
rules. Staff handles it. We
Yep.
never see it here.
Right.
If it's between 5 and 7 or 5 and 11,
Yep.
12, whatever number we pick,
Right. It
it's
could be
no
major.
longer a minor site plan. It comes to the planning board for
That's
review and
correct.
approval. If it's over the number we set, it requires a special use permit.
Right.
And it goes to the Board of Adjustment.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good.
All right, moving ahead because we're on schedule
Yeah.
to finish with 5, section 5. Are we finished with 502, 503?
Oh, 503, and this is the other item, and Pete, we can just come up with something. In lots of our jurisdictions, we have for these very minor type improvement projects, what I was alluding to, this plot plan type thing that someone can hand sketch and confirm that they're not going to be in violation of setbacks. Are you comfortable with us bringing you some draft language about that?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
I think so.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Jerry?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right, 504. I had a question mark there because I really didn't understand what we were doing with 504. But,
Let me get to the page here.
and it says remove reference to final plat and include a separate applicant.
It's in that
approval.
note. Yeah. A sketch and or pre-app meeting is not required for final plat submittal. I think it's removing that note.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. This is where they're trying to confuse site plans and plats in your UDO, and it,
Take the plat out of it.
yeah, take the
Okay.
plat out of there.
All right, so we remove the
question.
note.
Yes.
Yeah.
Note.
So
A
that's
sketch.
504 note.
No.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll tell you that all of the, and this is where we talked at the first meeting, all of the approval processes, site plans, plats, zoning permits, sign permits, it's all now, will all be moved when you get the draft ordinance into one section. They'll all be there.
I like the
one
way the
after-
sections are being adjusted.
okay.
I think
And
that's.
if you
makes
note
sense.
here, we have an inconsistency because in that paragraph, we say minor site plan. This involves single family and duplex dwellings. It doesn't agree with the other section.
Correct.
Yeah, you're right. They took it out of one, but not out of here.
Mm-hmm.
That's 504.
504, the first, it says minor site plans.
Oh, okay, got it.
Parentheses,
Yep.
Involves single family and duplex dwellings, but if you go back to the minor site plan, it doesn't say duplex dwelling.
503A does, at least in my copy.
Yeah, it said in my
Really?
copy as well for
Yeah,
duplex.
under 503A.
Not in mine. The amended 311, it just has single family dwellings.
Dwellings, yeah, mine does too.
You're looking at an older, my hard copy here agrees with you. This
Mine-
one's different.
What I might have to do is
We need
take a look
gotta
at everybody's
figure-
UDO.
You want to see?
Yes.
Oh, I believe you.
Yeah, so 503A is single family and duplex,
Yeah,
well,
duplex is
duplex
supposed to
dwellings
be
in
there.
mine.
Okay.
See, in the other one, it doesn't
Okay.
say that.
Isn't
The
it
other one,
funny
in this
how
section,
parts are, I mean, like we had the
Oh,
221, but,
And mine does.
okay,
I'm trying to think
that's
how
all right. Yeah, well, that'll be fixed.
Well, eventually we'll have a whole new fresh item. Yeah.
Can't wait for that.
Okay, well, we agree we must be consistent in those two
And,
sections.
and I'll tell you that in the new UDO, there'll also be a page that will go right after the table of content or before it that will have a list of amendments page. So you don't get into putting footnotes and everything. You'll just have a list of all the amendments, and life will be.
And it's at
easy.
the end of the document, or
It's in the front of it, first
document,
first
okay.
page. Yeah,
okay, so you don't have to footnote each page.
you don't have to
Right.
footnote each page. Yeah.
And I think that's where it came into play is that staff has either added it to the page, forgot to put it in the footnote, or both, or vice versa. So
Okay. All right. Did we have any issues with 504 or 505? I did not.
Well, I guess
talk about-
you're removing the consistency statement in general, right?
no, just moving the reference to the consistency statement and that 505.
That's 50D3.
Oh, yeah, I had it marked out.
Is that where you're saying remove a reference deck, or am I got the wrong place I'm looking at? Like, does that refer to removing it
Yeah,
from
D3. That I don't know why that this should not be in this section. We're dealing with site plans, etc., and we
Oh,
really
that's a zoning request, right?
yeah,
right.
yeah,
So 3 should be gone and
yeah,
Yeah, so the
subsection 3
consistency
should be gone
statement
in
should,
completely.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
right. Because all the rezoning stuff is
Is in
article.
rezoning.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. So that's another point.
Okay.
Yeah, and on 2, I think we discussed 30 days as being a little too stringent and perhaps amending it to 45.
Correct.
Am I mistaken in that?
no, I mean, that's
It's-
technically what
Yeah.
staff is doing now anyway.
Right, 45.
And we've got a note there.
Because
it
if
is.
you think
It's here.
about
Yeah.
if you think about the TRC process, you are from TRC to the planning board, you're 45 days out, roughly in general.
Okay, so we're
So-
going to amend that to be 45 days.
Yeah.
Cool, all right.
All right. I think that gets us through
Article 5.
Article 5.
Yeah.
Ron.
I agree. Am I allowed to make a comment on Article 6 before we adjourn and proceed?
Absolutely.
Everybody's earned their Guinness today.
I knew this.
I'm into that.
Oh,
My comment on Article 6 is, specifically the table. God, please don't make us go line by line through that table. I think a better way of, especially I'm looking at your 7th dot,
How did I know this? was
Wes, when
coming?
you get back to your desk over there. In general, reduce the number of uses in the table
yes.
by allowing for generalized categories, et cetera, et cetera. And I agree 100% on that one.
Well,
That
where is
instead of all these uses, especially on the commercial side, we should have like some generalized categories, like professional / services offices, personal services,
When-
goods trade,
Oh, okay,
retail.
When Wes called me
Okay.
about this a few weeks ago,
No, I only go to class.
his first statement to me, and I wholeheartedly agreed with him, is that
February
table
17th,
uses
got
right
my
now is
evidence.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Chad, I'm hanging on your every word.
He
I know.
did.
is
guys.
abysmal.
It's here somewhere.
It's just bad.
So could we maybe request a revised table
Yeah.
before next meeting?
Yes.
There's no way. I don't think. I mean, we could
Yeah, but
try.
can't you, I mean, to me, it's just eliminating.
Open your shirt. Doesn't it have a big S on it?
No, not a, well, can't we do, we got all this stuff where it says like individual
We're going to beat this to
beach,
death.
I mean,
if-
bicycle
unless
shop,
you do
church.
it.
That's what we need to do.
It's
I
like
mean,
striking all that and having one like general category that says retail trade / goods or something.
that's a generally it's an easy thing to do. I mean, remember part of and it may take us 2 meetings to get through the table, but part of this really is
Will.
before I just haul off and start changing something. Let's figure out what makes sense to you all. And
Right.
so
I guess we can agree then next meeting, just agree on major categories, but not line by line.
Yeah, we
changes.
can't get into the weeds on it as to what the
Because some of it,
retail
to me,
and what
doesn't
isn't.
even seem to be
It's
legal to decide that one type of business is not acceptable and another type of business is.
like a tattoo parlor isn't, but a nail salon is.
Is.
yeah, there's some stuff in there that's questionable and I mean it.
I'm gonna.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't know. I'm saying the approach is I'd like to avoid going line by line next meeting.
That's fine. I
But
mean,
maybe if you guys can come up with some general categories
what
Or that would be more appropriate to, because all we're deciding is whether something is a P or an S, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's right. And the intent of this project was a lot of the intent of this project was clarification, fixing things that are erroneous, cleaning things up. I don't believe the intent of was a wholesale change of making more uses permitted in certain districts and this, that, and the other. I think consolidation and clarification is really what we're looking at in your table of uses. And I do apologize. This new copy is printed with a line on the side, but the margin should be wider. The text perhaps is a little bit smaller though. So
I hope it's at home.
Thank you.
So, but what do you
That's my
need?
only comment on
The
that going
handout you
forward.
gave us
All right.
last
No,
time for
it's
six.
an excellent comment too, because
Right.
I looked at that and
know
I
I
said, we're
had
going to
it.
be here forever.
I must have
We're
left it at home.
deciding what that is. So we won't get into
all
the
I can
weeds on
figure.
that.
just we'll get in the weeds when you get the draft,
Okay.
and it'll take us a while.
All right. Seeing that we're through section 5, and I'm pleased that we got through section 5 within the 2-hour time frame for that portion of the meeting. Do we have any staff comments?
Yes. And I need to know if this would be okay. Are you still available on the 7th?
7th of April.
Yes.
Let's see.
We have a planning board meeting on the 7th.
Correct.
Yes, I'm still available.
Did you do a UDO meeting here?
Yes.
All right. So I'm right now, this will be my 3rd straight month of not having anything to TRC. So right now, instead of not meeting on the 7th, because nothing would be on the agenda, make the 7th a UDO update meeting and the 17th a UDO update meeting.
The 21st. The
21st. Yeah, that's what I
17th
meant, the
is
21st.
Okay, the 21st. So we're
Yes.
going to have 2 meetings next month
On
for
UDO.
UDO.
Happy day.
Well, I think that's good. It gets us some
It
keeps us
keeps us
mileage
on
here.
schedule
Okay.
because 6 is going to be a bear.
6 we
Yes.
won't finish in a meeting.
Correct.
So what about the rest of the staff? 7th is good for me.
Yeah, 7th works.
Well,
for me.
7th is the original planning board
Planning board
meeting,
meeting,
but
yes.
instead of not meeting at all, because technically
Yes.
putting nothing on it, I would put this on the agenda.
Rich,
Okay.
you're good?
I'm good.
Good.
My only concern is
Okay.
I'm having some scheduling issues for the 21st, so I may not be able to attend.
Oh, dear
I will
God.
try and address that, but
Okay.
that's just a heads up.
Okay.
And right now, that meeting is scheduled for 9 a.m. on the
Right.
21st.
Yeah,
correct?
they'll all be at 9 a.m. unless otherwise.
Okay.
Okay.
So the only time-
All right. So you're going to put on an advertisement for that then,
I
right?
don't
Not
have
really.
to.
I mean,
I'll just
8
put the
a.m. would
UDO
be
update
better,
on
but
the
I'm-
agenda as our regular
I
meeting
don't want to press my luck.
Okay.
as old
Okay.
business
With no packet,
with no packet.
because
Correct.
these packets are not going out to John Q.
Correct.
All right. Staff comments completed. Public comments. Alan, unless you have a comment, we are going to move beyond that. All right, we adjourn this meeting, and as everybody's aware, we're going to meet next for the UDO on the 7th of April at 9 a.m. here in council chambers.
I move that we adjourn. Would also like, as part of that adjournment, to compliment Chad on his persistence in some of these changes that we've asked him to make. I think we've made really good progress on the UDO over the last 3. I mean, we're up to Article 5, and
Look at all the overtime he's getting.
yeah, it's great.
Wes, thank you for your
Yeah, thank you.
diligence
Thank
here
you.
putting up with it.
Okay, so I move to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Uh,
I think
seeing no dissension,
we're out of here.
Thank you, guys.